You're tuning in to the J Blast Network. Oh yeah, welcome to the next level. "1997, the War of Polygons was well underway, as the PlayStation was quickly becoming the king of the fifth generation of consoles. Nintendo and Sega just couldn't keep up, even with a higher number of bits. With games like Crash Bandicoot, it would help kickstart the success of the PlayStation competing with the other platformers. However, the one area that Nintendo and Sega could not compete in was RPGs. The PlayStation had many amazing RPGs. Some even say that this was the golden era of RPGs. But there was one RPG that pushed the system to the top, and no one was able to replicate its success at the time. You know what I'm talking about. Final Fantasy VII, the PlayStation RPG. When people look at this system, this game always comes up in discussion, and it definitely earned its spot. Originally intended to be on the N64 with the help of Nintendo, Final Fantasy VII would prove to be a more ambitious project than what the system could handle. You see, the N64 used cartridges, and even though it had higher bits than the PlayStation, the fact that it was on a cartridge limited the storage and memory that one game could hold. It also made development much more expensive. However, CDs, on the other hand, allowed for more storage and were cheaper and easier to develop for. Knowing that the game could not be on the N64, Square finally picked up the phone, and guess who was calling? Sony. Sony offered Square a better deal, and since the PlayStation was better suited for Square's vision, they took the offer. Now, this was a big thing because the PlayStation was still new, and at the time developers wanted to be on the good side of Nintendo. But after Square took that deal, they would anger Nintendo. In other words, it would have to be a success because they were not getting on that platform anytime soon. Luckily, Square had an up-and-coming dream team. You know the names: director and writer Yoshinori Kitase, writer and artist Tetsuya Nomura, producer and writer Hironobu Sakaguchi, writer Kazukage Nojima, music composer Nobuo Uematsu, and many others on the development team that would bring this legendary project together. They decided to drift away from traditional fantasy elements and instead take the aesthetic of what the development team called post-industrial fantasy, a mix of futuristic and industrial themes, building off of some of the aesthetic elements presented in Final Fantasy VI. The story would be written around the themes of life, environmental destruction, and the consequences of socio-economic disparity. The battle system would be turn-based and would introduce the materia system and offer a variety of ways that players could win battles with each of the characters. The combination of elements would set Final Fantasy VII apart from the typical high fantasy association that came from many RPGs at the time. And areas like Midgar would attract more audiences, delivering an experience that could only be achieved on the PlayStation. Their words, not mine. In an era where RPGs were seen as a niche genre, Squaresoft and Sony would break the limits of what an RPG could be, changing what the majority of Western gamers saw in RPGs, materializing a road of success for not only the PlayStation, but the RPG genre as a whole. Hi, my name is Jay. You're tuning into the J Blast Network as we finally are able to take a look back into '97 at a story of love, life, and the pursuit of battle. Final Fantasy VII. We begin our journey in a dungeon scenario. After a smooth transition, FF7 puts us in the role of Cloud Strife, a mercenary hired by Avalanche, an eco-terrorist group that is here to take down the Maka reactor to save the planet. Players are immediately put in a position of action as only a few steps trigger the first battle. This helps us learn the basics of the combat system. For now, we can only attack, defend, and use a bit of magic, but as you progress through the reactor, more of the battle system will open up. Barrett, our second party member and the leader of Avalanche, tells us why we're here. You see, Shinra is the organization that's responsible for the Maka reactor, and they also control the city of Midgar itself. The Maka reactors are siphoning Maka from the planet, which is in turn killing the planet, and that's why we're here destroying the reactor. However, Cloud is just hired muscle and could care less about the planet or Avalanche's goals. Eventually we get to the core reactor and place a bomb on it. Cloud has some kind of breakdown for a bit, but then goes back to normal when the boss approaches. The Scorpion tank shows another level of the battle system with implementing strategy into the mix. Up until now, you killed enemies just by attacking, but now you have to use different methods as rushing at the wrong time will lead to you taking more damage. You also get to show off more Barrett's skill here too. Barrett's more of a ranged fighter, because he's the gunner class, while Cloud is a physical fighter with a sword. Barrett is good for fighting enemies who are in the air or are far away, while Cloud is stronger in close range combat. This especially applies to their limits, which are special attacks that can be activated after taking a certain amount of damage. These are super moves, unique to each character, with Barrett having strong long range blasts and Cloud having strong sword slashing techniques. Utilizing their strengths in the right way will lead to success in battle. After defeating the boss, Cloud and the others escape the reactor as it explodes, destroying some of the area around it, which affects the people living there, an unintended side effect that comes with the destruction of the reactor. The group splits up and plans to meet on the train. During this, Cloud runs into the flower girl we saw in the intro, and for the first time we were given a choice of how Cloud reacts, which in this case is her offering a flower. Always take the flower. After the exchange, the Shinra soldiers catch Cloud, and he escapes into the train and meets back up with Avalanche. This was the introduction of Final Fantasy VII. And I went into more detail about this because it's one of the implementations that made Final Fantasy VII capture a new audience into the genre. You see, most RPGs at the time had started off in a town, covering the story for a bit before you got into the action. And well, you're in the town, but the action's already here. FF7 combined the story introduction with its core gameplay, creating intrigue amongst players, not only in its narrative, but also progressing in the battle system. In the span of one dungeon, we gain a new party member, get introduced to a major goal of the story, and experience combat. Other RPGs aren't bad for taking a longer route and explaining its narrative and gameplay, but that was one stigma of the genre that could turn new players away immediately. This is not only present in the beginning either. For the most part, FF7 is a fast-paced game, if you know what you're doing. As you'll see as the game continues, we run into our third party member Tifa at Heaven's Bar, Avalanche's base of operations. She's a childhood friend of Cloud and was the one that told him about the job in the first place. Tifa is a martial artist of the group, so of course she's good at close range combat, with some high damaging combos. Her limit system works differently as she has to play slots to determine how much power her limit will have. Her fighting style is the exact opposite of her caring and reserved personality. She acts as the motherly figure of the group, trying to keep Cloud and Barrett from butting heads. Like now, for instance, Cloud is reluctant to continue working with Avalanche and just wants his money. But after remembering the childhood promise he made to Tifa, he agrees to take on another mission. It's here we're finally given access to some of Midgar and being able to adjust the materia on our characters. The materia system is the main component of Final Fantasy VII's battle system. Every action besides basic attack and defense is tied to this system. The materia is interesting because although every playable character has their own class and weapon, when it comes to the magic and abilities, everyone can essentially do everything. For instance, Barrett will always be a long or close range fighter depending on the weapon you have. However, if you set him with the right materia, he can be a mage, or a healer, or a buffer, or all three of those in one. Same with Cloud or Tifa. They aren't locked out of skills because everyone can literally do everything. For now, it's very limited, but as we progress through the game and find and buy more materia, the battle system will expand as well. The next mission that Cloud is sent on focuses on taking down the second Maka reactor in Sector 5. Before heading there, we are able to explore some of Sector 7. Here we get access to some shops for weapons and materia. We also get access to our first save point, which is a concept that many see as outdated. And I'll admit, not being able to save at any point can get annoying at certain parts of the game. However, as you'll see later on, sometimes having save points can add to the narrative of the game. It was a staple of most RPGs at the time, so it's not surprising that it's used here. And hey, if you're playing Dragon Quest, you have to go all the way back to the church in a town. Save points can be anywhere in this game, in dungeons or in towns, or in the wild. You never know. On our way to the next reactor, our team gets caught by Shinra's alert system and has to sneak into the reactor. When Cloud and the gang arrive to set the bomb, Cloud has another breakdown and it's a flashback of Tifa mourning the loss of her father, screaming the name of Sephiroth. This is a common occurrence of Cloud throughout the game, and each time it feeds us more information about the backstory of our protagonist and the decline of his mental state. You'll see what I'm talking about later on. When they start to escape, they are greeted by the president of Shinra, who knew they were coming and set a trap for them. A weak one, mind you, as the airbuster here goes down pretty quick. But this explosion creates a hole in the platform they were fighting on, causing Cloud to plummet below. Waking up from the fall, we see that miraculously, Cloud was saved by flowers that are growing in the church. This is where we meet the flower girl again, Aerith or Eris, depending on how you want to pronounce it, as our next party member. Aerith is considered the main and only dedicated healer of the party. She can be used differently with materia, however her limits all revolve around healing or buffing the party, and she's the only character in the game to have fully defensive limits. This makes her role very important in combat, as no one else is able to heal as well as her, and she's very important to the story. In fact, these 4 characters are probably the most important to the story. The other characters that come in have some importance, but not as big as these 4. Aerith is one of the 2 love interests in the story, and as such, she seems to have a thing for Cloud immediately, forcing him to be in her bodyguard so she can go on a date with him. Remember when I said the game had a fast pace in the beginning? Well, I kinda lied. This is where the game slows down for a bit, but for a good reason. This is where we get introduced to many of the struggles of Midgar. We get the introduction of the Turks, a task force that works for Shinra, in order to capture Aerith. And once we escape them, we get to see more of the life of the slums. We get to see more of the underbelly of Midgar as we try to reunite with the rest of the party. It's very dirty and claustrophobic. Junk is everywhere, and people live amongst the waste, and sewer pipes and other structures that hold up the place. The junk itself seems to come to life as monsters that attack those who are unfortunate to live in the slums. There are even houses that eat people who walk in them. Yeah, the slums are not a suitable place to live, and yet these people have no choice. They can't just leave, and Shinra's not going to help them at all. If anything, Shinra's making the situation worse by throwing all that junk down there and constantly taking the planet's resources, killing it in the process. We get told this constantly when Shinra is brought up in the conversation, but FF7 goes out of its way to show us this through gameplay as well. Makes you feel bad for the little people at the bottom. Continuing on the story, we get to see Cloud and Aerith's date as they stop at the park. What's interesting here is Aerith brings up her old boyfriend, how he was in Soldier 2, and how similar him and Cloud are. Keep that in mind for later on. The conversation is interrupted when they see Tifa being taken by Don Cornelio. He's the head of the local brothel, and the women that go to his mansion end up laying with him and the rest of his lackeys. Bad news for Tifa, so Cloud and Aerith head to Wild Market. This section is probably the slowest in the Midgar portion of the game, as we have to go back and forth to get a dress. You see, in order to get into Don Cornelio's mansion, you have to dress as a girl. Specifically, Cloud has to dress as a girl because he needs to help Aerith, who's going to go in there too. And you have to get this dress made, which means you have to keep going back and forth between these buildings over and over again and play some mini games with these gym rats. Now, I'll admit that this could be more personal to me because I'm an idiot when it comes to navigation in RPGs. And every time I play this section, it always takes a long time because I forget where to go. But man, it's a bit of a slog. There is an interesting area here with the Honeybee Inn where a lot of the freaky stuff goes down. Just look at this. Ugh. But Cloud also has another breakdown here if you go in the right room, and you can hear the words claiming that something's moving and he can't waste his time here, as if something is calling to him, which is pretty strange. When you get the dress, you'll finally be able to access Don Cornelio's mansion and find Tifa, who actually got captured on purpose to find out what the Don knows and about Shinra's plans. It's then that all 3 of them are called into the Don's room, and depending on which dress you pick for Cloud, you'll either be picked for him or sent to serve his lackeys as leftovers, which involves a really creepy scene where they approach Cloud. Good thing Cloud has a sword to stop them, but man, you just think about all the other people that went through this. After beating all the perverts, Cloud in the game confronts the Don, with some hilarious dialogue being exchanged here. Seeing this dude squirm at the thought of him getting his balls chopped off is very entertaining. Though the Don had a plan for this and tells the party that Shinra is going to drop the plate on Sector 7 and blame it on Avalanche to wipe them out. Just as the party is about to leave, they are sent down the sewers by a trapdoor planted by the Dawn. Now it's a race against time to get back to Sector 7 before the plate falls. Fighting through the Dawn's pet and navigating through the train graveyard, the party reaches Sector 7, but it's not looking good. We see Wedge fall from the bomb platform to his death as Barrett and the other members of Avalanche fight off the Turks. Cloud and Tifa head up there to help Barrett while Eric goes to find Marlene, who was Barrett's daughter. Forgot to mention it earlier on. As they climb up the tower, they see the end of the other Avalanche members, Biggs and Jesse. The saddest part of this is seeing Jesse talk about how this is what she gets for hurting those people from the first reactor mission. You know, if you look at it from Shimmer's perspective, they're doing the same thing that Barrett is, and justifying the means to an end, this time being Avalanche. And while the goal of Barrett was more righteous, you have to ask yourself, what makes them different if both sides take lives for their methods? Cloud and Tifa make it to the top of the tower and confront the Turks with Barrett. However, they're too late, and they narrowly escape the fall of Sector 7. It seems no one survived the fall, leaving Barrett so worried about what happened to Marlene. The party heads to Eric's house to see what happened to her, and it turns out Eric traded herself to keep Marlene safe with her mother. Barrett is overjoyed by the news, but now Shinra has Eric, and we're told more of the backstory of her and why Shinra wants her so badly. You see, everything that Shinra is doing is to find the Promised Land. They need Aerith, who is the last ancient. She's supposed to know where the land is located. You see, Aerith's biological mother was a descendant of the ancients, and after escaping Shinra mortally wounded, she gave her baby to Aerith's adopted mother. Being an ancient means that Aerith has some unique powers, that she can hear the voice of the planet and the voice of others far away, including hearing the deaths of her adopted mother's husband before he was even reported. Shinra was able to find out what Aerith was, but did not take her away because they thought they could slowly get her on their side as she grew up, but now they are desperate. They want to take her by force to find the Promised Land now. With their friend kidnapped, their home destroyed, and the many lives lost in the fall of Sector 7, the party can no longer stand Shinra's action and now set out to save Aerith by infiltrating Shinra Tower. Climbing up from Wall Market, the party is able to reach the tower. Here you get two options, either storm in the place or sneak in. I always sneak in because it involves less fighting, and there's some funny dialogue while climbing these really long stairs. Shinra Tower is the final dungeon area of Midgar, and the longest. Once you come here, there's no going back, so prepare because a lot happens. For a start, you'll mostly be sneaking around the tower, trying to reach the floor that Aerith is on, which is the lab. Explore enough, and you'll meet the mayor of Midgar, who hates Shinra just as much as you do, and even gives you an item if you can solve his riddle, which I didn't hear. I also find it funny how the employees don't question why Cloud and the others are there. You'd think seeing a man with a giant sword and a man with a gun on his arm would be a red flag if they aren't supposed to be here. But they actually give you advice and tell you how to get to higher floors. As the party goes higher in the tower, they listen to the heads of Shinra through the vents. These guys are just plain evil. Ryu seems to be the only one who cares about the people of Midgar, while the rest just look out for themselves, as they want to leave Sector 7 in its destroyed state just so they can put more money into finding the Promised Land. Yeah, these guys need to go, but I think the solution is more complicated than killing. Shinra literally controls the city, and though there is a mayor, he has no power compared to them. A system like this doesn't just go away by killing those in power, and soon we'll see the consequences of trying that. We didn't see Professor Hojo enter the room. You are going to hate this character. I hate this character. He's absolute scum, as he talks about his plans on breeding Aerith with other specimens so they can use the child for constant research. See what I mean when I said this guy is scum? And his design is pretty disgusting too. But following him will give us access to the lab, which we can see a lot of Hojo's experiments, including the specimen Hojo was going to use to breed with Aerith. There's also an ominous container containing the headless body of the creature known as Genova. Did I mention that FF7 is partially a horror game? Hojo tries to begin his breeding process, but the specimen tricks Hojo into releasing both it and Aerith from the container, attacking Hojo. This specimen is Red 13, our next party member, and one of the most badass party members of the game. He's actually my second favorite character in the game, and we're about to use him for his next boss fight. Red 13 is this weird unknown hybrid of a lion and a wolf, and sports a firetail. He can be made into one of the strongest party members in the game, as he sort of represents the blue mage class of the game, and has more of his options open up with better materia near the end game. Red also has a slight disdain for humans right now, which you can't really blame the guy having been experimented on by Hojo. But for now, he's good enough to wipe this boss out. The party is able to escape the lab, but get caught by the Turks and locked in the cell. As the party thinks of a way to get out, the doors open and a trail of blood can be seen. There's a killer on the loose, and that killer is Sephiroth, having not only killed many of Shinra's employees, but also the president as well. Seems like Sephiroth did us a favor here, freeing us and killing the president. But as I said before, just killing the president was not going to solve anything, as he's immediately replaced by his son, who wants to continue his plan. This is where the party splits, and if this is the first time playing the game, you might split your material up wrong with them. You see, at this point, the party has to get out of Midgar, but Shinra is not going to let that happen. Cloud confronts Rufus solo in the battle on the roof, while the others try to escape the building, but they are confronted by Shinra's robots. None of these fights are too hard. I mean, we're only in the beginning of the game, but if you don't have the right materia in the split, you'll run into some trouble. The fight on the elevator only allows Barrett to attack the enemy normally, since he has range, and the other two characters can only use materia or their limits to reach the boss. You can only imagine how dragged out this fight could be without good materia equipped. Rufus, on the other hand, is kind of a jobber, relying on a stupid dog to help, but once you get rid of him, he's pretty easy to deal with. Rufus will then flee on a helicopter as Cloud reunites the party to escape Midgar, and with the guards in the front, there's only one option to take. That's rad. You get to play this awesome minigame, Escaping from Shinra by Motorcycle. This is one of the major minigames of FF7. There are plenty of smaller ones you do to progress, like that workout one you did earlier, but this is one of them that can be repeated at any time. Some of them are hit or miss, but this one definitely hits. You gotta protect the car the others are in by attacking Shinra's goons, and once you get to the end of the road, there's one last boss fight. They really want you dead, but this guy is easy, and finally after beating him, we're out of Midgar. You won't be able to return for a while as the city gates are locked. This is the end of what I consider the tutorial section of the game. It can be slow at points, but I think the story and the environment is what carries players through this section. And once you get past this, the game really opens up. When I said the game opens up, I really meant it. If Midgar was like the tutorial section, then this is where the game really begins. No longer are we held back by the corridor of filth and mechanical junk of Midgar. We are now in the world map, and nothing's more satisfying than seeing the sky finally clear up as you leave Midgar. There's just something majestic about exploring the world map, and I know what you're thinking. How can this be majestic? This game is old and ugly, but for the time, and honestly to me today, there's a certain charm to this low poly world, and it's able to communicate its sense of scale phenomenally. From the mountains, plains, rivers, and valleys, FF7's world map makes exploration intriguing and immersive, as it should be. This is an adventure after all. Adding to this feeling is the music, which is actually the theme of Cloud. It sounds hopeful yet a bit sorrowful, and that's how I would describe most of the FF7 soundtrack, and adds a bit of darkness to the atmosphere. Exploration isn't the only thing that opens up. The battle system and the story also opens up as well. I would say that Final Fantasy VII has 4 main modes of play: exploration, battling, story, and minigames. You'll encounter different minigames throughout the game. Some are replayable while others are tied to a specific event. It's not major as most can be skipped, but they did dedicate parts of the game to it. The battle system expands by giving new materia that are more powerful and focus on status elements. For instance, you can find summon materia, strong materia that summon these godly beings capable of mass destruction on a global scale. Oh, and they also summon a few chocobos too. These animations are some of the sickest in the game, and you have to ask yourself, how is the battlefield still intact after these devastating attacks? There's also independent materia, like cover, which can be used to have one party member take damage for another. There's support materia, which can be used to enhance attacks, such as all, making the magic is paired with effect on all enemies or all party members depending on what the magic is. There's command materia, which adds abilities to the command menu. The enemy skill materia is one of these, which allows you to use certain enemy attacks that you learn from being hit by that enemy with. Then there's magic materia, which adds different spells to your magic command menu. You start with the basic materia like fire, ice, and restore, but as the game progresses, the magic you gain becomes more about status effects, and defensive and attack magic becomes much stronger. Materia also goes into your equipment, as it determines how much materia you hold, and elemental effects can be added to your equipment depending on what materia you use. All materia can gain XP, so battling helps level them up, and certain offer new abilities upon leveling. Players who micromanage these systems are rewarded with some powerful combinations in battle. Some even break the limitations of the game. Then there's the expansion of limits, which I explained earlier. Limits can be expanded by leveling them up. The more you use a limit with a character, the more that limit levels up, and you can unlock a second limit in that level. There are 4 limit levels, 3 you can level up to, and then your final limit, which you have to find somewhere in the game. In order to unlock a second limit in the level, you have to use the first limit a certain amount of times. In order to unlock the next level of the limit, you have to kill a certain amount of enemies with that character. This becomes a problem with certain characters. Later on, you might have to grind if you don't use that character often, or if you skip battles. Level 1 limits will start to do less damage, so battling to level up limits becomes important in the later half of the game. So it's a good thing that FF7's battle system and mechanics make you want to keep fighting. It also helps that the music kicks ass too. Just like the battle system, the story expands immediately after leaving Midgar. After heading to the town of Calm, the calm from the storm of Midgar, and the calm before the event that happened next, Cloud decides to tell the party his origin with Sephiroth and Soldier. This whole section is very important and is one of the most genius ways that FF7 sets up its main villain. You get to play the events of Nibelheim 5 years ago and see the true power of Sephiroth up front. Before I go further, I'll say this: you'll never actually fight Sephiroth until the final boss, and yet he holds the most intimidating presence in the game. Not even a few minutes into the flashback, you are put into a boss fight where Cloud gets washed by this dragon. But Sephiroth, he one-shots him. Now that's power. But it gets more insane. Cloud and Sephiroth are sent to Nibelheim to investigate the Mako reactor on the mountain. When they arrive in the town, they see Tifa, who is the tour guide, and takes them to the reactor. On the way there, you can run into some enemies, and each time Sephiroth will completely decimate those who dare to stand in your path. Just look at those numbers. Now that's overkill. If you check Sephiroth's stats, you'll see he's level 50, and if you check his materia, my god, he has everything mastered. Yeah, Sephiroth is on a whole nother level, and all this is shown through gameplay. At the reactor, they find the origin of the problem, and find Hojo's experiments locked in the container. Hojo is actually Sephiroth's father, and Sephiroth to test his methods. But what happens next will change Sephiroth's world forever. One of the creatures, created through Genova cells in Mako, break out in a horrific fashion, leading to Sephiroth to wonder if his origin of creation were the same. He then spends days in the library of the Simmer Mansion, studying the notes left behind of the Genova project. On the day Cloud goes to the library to check on him, Sephiroth has changed. He sees humanity as traitors, It says that he's a descendant of Genova and believes humans were the ones to wipe out the Cetra years ago. Those were the ancients. He then rushes to see his mother, and as Cloud pursues him out the mansion, he is treated to a horrible sight. His hometown on fire, with many of the citizens dead, including Cloud's mother. The man responsible? Well, he's right here. Angered by the destruction of his hometown, Cloud continues to pursue Sephiroth back to the reactor, where we see Sephiroth kill Tifa's father and stab Tifa. Cloud still pursues Sephiroth until they reach the room where Genova is, where Sephiroth ripped Genova's from the mechanical binding and finally confronts Cloud. With his family and home destroyed by the person he idolized the most, Cloud heads in to attack, but that's when the flashback ends, which comes off as very confusing because how did Cloud survive and kill Sephiroth then when clearly he was outmatched, and how is Sephiroth still alive now? Keep those thoughts for later in the video. Now, this isn't the end of the Sephiroth setup either. As we continue towards Junon, the party encounters a marsh that holds a giant snake called the Midgar Zolom. If you try fighting him now, he'll decimate you. In order to get past him, you need to get a Chocobo. Right in front of the marsh is the Chocobo farm, and talking to the Chocobo Bill will give you access to the Chocobo lure materia, which allows you to find Chocobos in random encounters. Buying grass from the farm allows you to stall a Chocobo while you take out the enemies around it, allowing you to ride the Chocobo in the world map. This can be a frustrating task at first, especially if you hit the little critters by accident, but once you get them, they are a great enhancement to exploration. Not only do they run faster, but certain breeds of Chocobo can cross unwalkable terrain, and random encounters are turned off when riding them. They also really like to dance. My favorite addition to them is the music. Both the battle and overworld themes change when you're with them. Crossing the marsh with the Chocobo allows the party to evade the snake, but what's on the other side is a sight to behold. We see a similar snake to the one we just evaded, except this one's on a pike. Only one man could have done this. Sephiroth. And it seems like he did it with ease. Now this is how you set up a strong villain. Someone who, if in the room, bring fear to not only the characters, but the players as well. And all this is shown off with no current face-to-face interaction with the player, besides a flashback. This just makes it more scary because we haven't even seen what Sephiroth can truly do yet, and these effortless feats are already beyond our capability. As we head closer to Junon, we reach our next party member, and the first optional one, Yuffie. Yuffie can start appearing in the forest after the player gets past the mental mines. You have to fight her and then talk to her the right way after. Getting Yuffie is a whole setup. There's a save point near you when you're about to talk to her, but going to that save point or opening up the menu will allow her to steal your gil and materia and run off. And if you talk to her and answer her in the wrong ways, she'll leave stealing your materia and gil. This makes getting Yuffie an annoyance, and also makes the character of Yuffie annoying, as most players who don't have a guide will get tricked and lose items constantly. However, if you know what you're doing, then it's pretty easy to get her. Yuffie is considered a ninja, or the thief class of the party. She starts with the steal material, which allows her to steal items from enemies, and uses her shuriken to attack. She can be very useful in combat, and her limits are very strong, so dealing with the method to get her is worth it. Now you might be wondering, why is she optional, not mandatory? Well, it's because of time constraints. There are 2 optional party members in FF7, Yuffie and Vincent, who we'll receive later. Both were originally going to have more impact on the story, however, they were both about to be on the cutting room floor until they cut out and rearranged their stories so they could get the game out on time. Yuffie herself was originally going to be a bounty hunter who was hunting Cloud, and depending on which wanted post the player last saw, it would determine her stats once she joined you. There's nothing like that here, but she will be near the party's average level no matter when you get her. The story she does have is more important than the next section, and is also optional involving her hometown of Wutai. We'll go into that later. The last stop before Junon is Condor Cannon, which is optional at first until later on in the game, and contains probably the worst minigame in the entire game. The folks at Condor Cannon want to defend the condor they have sitting above the base. As such, the player plays a tower defense type minigame, and boy, it's awful. It doesn't matter what units you set because the defense will always be slow and boring. And the worst part of it is that you have to use your own money to pay for these units. It's not like any of this matters because if the enemy gets too close, we just fight it in a standard battle anyway and win the minigame. And the enemy itself is not even that hard in the first place. It's a waste of time and a waste of money, but sadly, it will be mandatory once later in the game. Finally, we reach Junon, where Shinra's military base is. Here, the party must sneak onto the boat Shinra is taking to the West Island. This is the last area that Shinra holds great influence over. They have other sections on the other islands, but you start to see less of their influence as you travel. Cloud sneaks into the base using the dolphin that we acquired from this girl from saving her from a fish monster. She also gives us the Shiva material, which is technically our first official summon material that we get. Cloud is then able to disguise himself as a Shinra soldier and joins in the inauguration of Rufus Shinra that's happening today, so he can sneak onto the boat. We get to play another funny minigame with having to march in coordinates with the other soldiers, and the soldiers even use Cloud's wind poles to impress the president. That victory fanfare never gets old. The party boards the ship, but the ride is stopped when something on the boat attacks. This something is Sephiroth, who's killed many of the passengers on the boat. He leaves Cloud an ominous message before dropping a piece of Jenova. This is what you'll be fighting instead of Sephiroth for most of the game when he appears, which is pretty scary because not only does he have his own strength, but he also has the strength of Jenova as well. This disfigured abomination of flesh is only a piece of Jenova, so it's not as strong as the original, but it will put up a decent fight. The party defeats Jenova and is able to make it to the West Island at the port of Costa del Sol, a tropical paradise that acts as a rest stop before the next act of the game begins. The music also adds to the tropical relaxation that this town presents. One interesting thing is that you can encounter Hojo on the beach, who has left Shinra to pursue his own goals. He asks Cloud if he ever felt like he was being called somewhere, and tells the party to head west. Now, why would he give us advice? But I guess lucky for him, that advice aligns the party goals to stop Shinra from reaching the promised land, and to find out what it actually is. Little does the party know that their actions are being manipulated by greater powers, even beyond that of Shinra. If FF7 was good before, then this is where I would say the game becomes great. Not just because of the outstanding locations in this second island, but also the expansion of character arcs. Nearly every town on this island serves as an area for a character arc for one of the party members. The story takes more of an episodic route for a bit, creating conflicts in each area that get resolved in those areas. First up is Barrett, where we travel through the canyons and railroads to reach his hometown, Corral. Before we get there, we actually encounter another Mako reactor, and the music changes here to that eerie sound we heard in the first reactor. Keep note of this area for later. This is Corral currently, Barrett's hometown, or what's left of it. The citizens here see Barrett as a traitor because of what he did in the past, in which Barrett briefly explains what happened to the town. Barrett was tricked by Shinra into letting them build a Mako reactor near Corral. This was said to bring more wealth to the town, but it actually only brought destruction. Destruction by Shinra. In its place now soars the Golden Saucer, the casino or amusement area of the game. This is where you can replay most of the mini games, but it has a fee. You see, in order to get into the Golden Saucer, you have to buy a pass. This pass allows you to access it one time. You can also buy a lifetime pass, which allows you to access it forever, but most players won't have enough money at that point. But that's not all that costs in this area, as you have to use GP points, which you earn from completing minigames in the park. These points can be used on the amusement rides, but it's also used to save your game. That's right, you have to pay to save your game in this area. Now that's cheap. Before you can do anything, however, Barrett, in a fit from Corral, splits off from the party, leaving Cloud to pick someone who he's going to the park with. I always pick Tifa because she's the best. There's a haunted hotel, a roller coaster, an arcade where you can play old minigames and some new ones, and there's chocobo racing. There's a lot to do here, but you can't be distracted for long. Near the entrance of the arcade lies a cat on a giant Moogle. This is our next party member, Kate Sif, and is one of the worst party members in the game. After giving Cloud an ominous fortune that even he was confused by, Kate Sif decides to join the party to see what happens to Cloud. His first limit is nothing special, as it's just an attack multiplier using a dice roll. However, his second limit, Slots, is the game breaker, when it wants to be. Slots is a chance of using its own unique attacks, casting summons even those you don't have in your inventory yet, and being able to kill any enemy in the game instantly. But it can also game over you. You see why I don't use this character? This is what makes Kate Sif stand out, as these are his only two limits, his second limit being his final limit, which he gets from leveling, unlike the other characters who have to go find their final limit. Although the absolute power of the slot seems useful, you'll actually rarely get the insta-kill or the game over. Most of the time you'll get the toy box. Now, there's a way to get the perfect slots, but that requires some pause buffering. The slots are already rigged anyway, as the last slot will change one place after what you selected. So to get what you want, you have to think 2 steps ahead. He's way too situational for me, so I barely need to play as him. The Golden Saucer also contains the Battle Square. Ooh. Holy shit. That's a lot of dead people. Because all the dead people here are inflicted with bullet wounds, the first suspect is Barrett, which leads Cloud in the game to be framed for this crime and sent down into the desert prison. This is what is left of the old Corral. No longer habitable to live, with prisoners and giant monsters that attack to survive. Nowhere is safe in this near desolate wasteland. Even Barrett's home has been ransacked for resources. The old Corral is dead. Now we truly see the guilt that Barrett carries because of his actions. The party confronts Barrett in his house, and he explains the rest of his story. There's another man with a gun grafted on his arm. Dine, Barrett's old friend from Corral, and Marlene's real father. One day they were headed to check on the Mako reactor, the same one we saw on the way to Corral, but they see an unholy sight, a Corral being burned to the ground. The two realize Shinra had betrayed them and try to salvage what's left of the village. However, they are too late, as they are confronted by Scarlet, and trying to escape, both Barrett and Dine lose an arm, with Dine falling to his then presumed death. From that day forward, Barrett swore revenge on Shinra and got a gun grafted to his arm. However, he heard a story of another man getting the same operation that he did, believing this to be Dine. Barrett wants to confront him and apologize to him alone, but the party comes with him anyway. When they find Dine's hideout, they find the shell of a man who's lost everything. A man who's gone insane and seeks nothing but the destruction of everything in the world. Even when Barrett tells Dine that Marlene is alive, the one thing he still has from his old life, he still seeks destruction, including killing his own daughter. In his deranged mind, it's his way of reuniting Marlene with his mother. But first, he must kill Barrett. But Barrett fights back. In a 1v1 match against Dine, Barrett defeats him. Finally realizing the monster he has become, Dine says he's unfit to be on this planet anymore, and he tells Barrett that his hands are too stained to carry Marlene anymore, and gives him the pendant of his wife before jumping off the cliff and killing himself, with his last words being, "Don't ever make her cry." Barrett can only respond by telling Dine that just like him, his hands are stained as well, and he's unfit to hold her either. The Corral portion reveals more of Barrett's true motives. It's not like he doesn't care for the planet, but he was always truly fighting for himself to get revenge on Shinra, much like Dine. But now he slowly begins to realize that what he's really fighting for is Marlene. This is why Barrett is my favorite party member. Many write him off as a stereotypical angry black man, but he's more than that. In fact, all the characters are more than their initial appearance. Barrett deals with the guilt of not only having his town destroyed, but his family and friends ripped from him. And much like Dine, Barrett took innocent lives in the pursuit of his revenge. It may be for the planet, as he says, but those people still died when the Mako reactor was destroyed and when the Sector 7 plate fell, all in effect of his actions of revenge against Shinra. And when you look at it that way, Barrett, much like Dine, really is unfit to hold Marlene. However, Barrett didn't become a monster like Dine, and also knows that somebody has to be there for Marlene and finish the fight against Shinra. This was Barrett's critical moment for development. He still develops a little bit more after this, but most of it takes place here. He even changes after this, in fact being more nicer to Cloud and the party in general. In order to lead the desert prison, the party has to complete a chocobo race so they can explain the real culprit to Dio. For now, you use chocobo that's given to you. When you have chocobos in the stable, you'll be able to use them to race. When Cloud wins the race, he's pardoned and given a buggy, which is our first real transportation device, and allows us to cross rivers and deserts on the world map. Next stop is Gongaga, an optional town, but it holds some importance to the backstory of Eric and Cloud. You run into the Turks who want revenge from the last battle. What's interesting here is that Reno has a crush on Tifa, and having her in your party will make him not do any damage to her. I feel bad for the guy because she's technically already taken, but not too bad to not take advantage of their weakness. Upon beating the Turks, the party wonders how they found him so easily and suspect that a spy might be among them. In the town, they meet a family who recognize that Cloud was a member of Soldier, and they ask him if he knew of Zack, Zack being Aerith's old boyfriend, to which Cloud knows nothing about. However, Aerith notes that Zack and Cloud are very similar, including their stories of how they got into Soldier. Keep that in mind for later. Next up is Cosmo Canyon, the home of Red 13, and it's also where his major character development takes place. Cosmo Canyon is actually the place where Avalanche was formed, being an area where residents here protect the planet rather than abuse its resources. We meet Bugenhagen here, Red's grandfather, and he reveals a lot about Red and the planet. You see, despite all of Red's wise words, he's actually a teenager in the species years and is just trying to act mature. His real name is Nanaki, and he hates his father because he thought he abandoned him and his mother when he was younger, something Bugenhagen seems to know more about. Bugenhagen then takes us to his laboratory and explains what the life stream of the planet is. Everything on the planet is made up of spirit energy, or the life stream. Even the planet itself was formed from this energy. When a person dies, they return to that energy, to the planet, and becoming one with the life stream. And the life stream helps create new life from that energy. The Mako energy that Shinra is digging up is the life stream itself, being turned into Mako. So in essence, Shinra is literally sucking the life out of the planet, so the situation now is a lot more dire than it would seem. Them doing this will one day destroy the entire planet, and according to Bugenhagen, it's already too late to stop the process. The planet will be destroyed because of how much Mako has been siphoned. At a campfire after Bugenhagen's discussion, the group discusses their worries and hopes on the journey so far, and this is where Red talks about his disdain for his father. Bugenhagen, overhearing this, takes Red and the party into a locked-off cave in the canyon. As they progress through the cavern, Bugenhagen talks about the battle with the G-Tribe, the fight that Red's father ran from. The ghosts of the G-Tribe are what you fight in this cave, as they are still seeking revenge for their deaths in the past. Bugenhagen says that one warrior was able to hold them off and protect the canyon, but to reach the exit they had to fight the ghost of a G-Tribe leader, the last remnant of what was left of the G-Tribe. Defeating him leads us to one of the most powerful scenes in the game, where we find out the warrior that stayed behind and fought the G-Tribe was Red's father, Seto, having sacrificed himself, now being turned to stone from taking the poisonous arrows of the G-Tribe. Seto and Red's mother never told him about his sacrifice, wanting everyone to forget about the cave, which is why Red or Nanaki never knew about what happened. Having seen that his father was a warrior to his end and hearing Bugenhagen's message of what could be the planet's fate, Nanaki vows to help the party save the planet and return to Cosmo Canyon as a warrior. And this scene always gets me, man. Still being conscious in the stolen state, Seto hears his son's declaration and cries tears of pride for his son. And man, this scene, man. This is one of my favorite moments, and it always manages to get an emotional moment out of me. And It's why Nanaki is one of my favorite characters. The relationship between Nanaki and his father hit on a more personal note than many of the other moments in the game, and seeing father and son finally able to show approve for each other really hits my heart. I just wish you could change his name after this because it doesn't make sense to keep calling him Red now. Nanaki even changes his character, losing his disdain for humans and becoming nicer in general. He even admits he changed little from this experience, which should reflect in the changing of his name too. And it's because of this that from this point on, I'll be referring to him as Nanaki. If the game won't do it, then I'll do it myself. The only sad part about this is that this is the only development that Red gets throughout the game. All of it is put in this one area, and while the development is great, he doesn't really have that much importance besides this and maybe a couple of scenes that are optional later in the game. Yes, his goal is to help them protect the planet, which he is doing, but at the same time, he doesn't develop more from this, and he has no bigger importance in the story from this, which again is one of the problems when you have this big cast. As I said earlier, Aerith, Cloud, Tifa, and Barret are the most important characters in the game. Those are the characters who receive constant development throughout the game, while the other party members don't receive as much development as them or only have one area dedicated to them. It makes sense for the optional characters, but for the characters that are mandatory, I wish there was more. Nibelheim is next, and this is one of the stranger ones. At this point, we've only seen Nibelheim through Cloud's flashback, in which we're told that it was burned down by Sephiroth. But here, it's still intact, much to Cloud and Tifa's confusion. More confusion is caused when talking to the resident, as they don't even know who Cloud is or remember the incident that happened 5 years ago. And there are many of these cloaked individuals that are numbered and always talk about a reunion. This brings some doubts into the party whether Cloud's story was real or not, but even Cloud struggling a bit to believe himself. More secrets lie here as we enter the Shinra mansion and acquire our next party member, Vincent, who, like Yuffie, is optional. In order to get Vincent, you must search the mansion for clues about a safe combination, and once opening the safe, fight a boss that holds the key to get into Vincent's room in the basement. At first, Vincent is reluctant to even talk to you until you mention Sephiroth or Shinra, which he kinda reluctantly joins, hoping to find Hojo. You see, Vincent was sleeping here as punishment for what happened in the past, letting his love Lucretia, who he says is the real mother of Sephiroth, to die at the hands of Hojo's experiments. So he's seeking revenge for the sins of Shinra. We also meet Sephiroth in the mansion too, in the same area that Cloud saw him in the flashback, asking Cloud if he was going to the reunion, as it's where Jenova will be, and throws a materia at Cloud and flies away in a funny fashion. A strange reaction for someone that tried to kill us earlier. We didn't chase him going through Mount Nebel, the same one from the flashback. This place already creeped me out there, but without Sephiroth fodderizing enemies, it makes this area even more creepier. Especially with the bizarre enemies here, including the dragon from the flashback. You can even go back to the Mako reactor from the flashback. This is a good area to test out Vincent, whose gimmick is that his limit turns him into monsters, like this werewolf. However, once he turns, he cannot revert until the end of battle, or if he dies, and you can't control what he does when he gets into these forms, which means leveling up his limits matter more because soon his level 1 limit will barely do any damage to the higher level enemies. It can also be a hindrance since, again, using his limits means you can't control him, so whatever material you're using cannot be used when he's in this state. However, the benefits of the later transformations make up for this flaw. Rocket Town is the last town on this island. It's called Rocket Town because, well, it's a town that has a rocket in it. And it also is where we find our final party member, Sid. Of all the party members, I would say Sid is the most relatable, being a middle-aged man who just wants to live his life dream. Sid was a lead engineer for the space program at Shinra, which would help him with his dream of going into space. However, on the launch day, one of his assistants, Shara, was trying to fix an error in one of the oxygen tanks, and launching fully with her dare would have killed her. So Sid stopped the launch midway, and Shinra decided to stop funding the space program because of this failure. Now Sid blames her for the loss of his dream, and Shara, feeling guilty, tries to do everything to make up for her mistake. It's a good thing there are censors here, man, because Sid treats her like shit over a mistake that honestly might have saved his life. Definitely might take some time for others to warm up to him. Anyway, the party is talking to him so they can get his airplane, the Tiny Bronco, so they can fly to the Temple of the Ancients before Shinra gets there. Unfortunately, Shinra has already arrived looking to take Sid's plane as well. However, Sid is having none of this, as they won't give him his funding for the space program, and now want to take his plane. But while he argues with them, one of the heads of Shinra, Palmer, tries to take the plane for himself, with the party stopping him in a hilarious fight, at least the Palmer getting ran over by a Shinra truck in the end. And you never see his model again, so I'm guessing the dude just died here. What a jobber. The party then takes their Tiny Bronco, with Sid hopping on at the last minute to escape Shinra, but not before they shoot out the wings, causing the tiny Bronco to lose flight. With Sid roped in thanks to the party and Shinra's actions, he decides to stick with the party and see where they go. We get our next vehicle here, which is the tiny Bronco, which allows us to navigate shallower water. It's the only mode of transportation that acts like a boat. As for Sid himself, he represents the Dragoon class of the game, using a spear to fight and his limits being a mix of some Dragoon moves and some engineering tools of his own. Sid is one of the more powerful party members in the game, and it's great to use in combat. Although we have covered all the towns in this island, there is still one more area we can go to now thanks to the tiny Bronco, Wutai, which is the home of Yuffie. It's an optional area where her character development takes place. Before arriving in the town, Yuffie tries to warn them about the area before getting ambushed by Shinra soldiers. Upon defeating them, it turns out Yuffie ran away and stole all the party's materia, so there's no turning back now. Wutai is based off feudal Japan, obviously, with everything in the town living up to the aesthetic. It's probably the only area that can be traced back fully to a real-life country. Here, the party chases Yuffie throughout the city, trying to catch her and get her materia. During the chase, the party runs into the Turks, who actually don't want to fight because this is their day off. Well, except Elena, who's trying to help find Don Cornerio, who was wanted after spilling about Shinra's plans to drop the plate earlier in the game. The party confronts Yuffie multiple times when they finally catch her, and she tells this sob story about Wutai. You see, Wutai used to be a strong country until the war with Shinra, which they lost, which allowed Shinra to turn their whole town into a tourist trap, which is why the Turks are here of all places on their day off. Yuffie says that collecting materia will help bring honor back to the town, but in reality, she just wants the materia for herself. But she does care about the town too. She leads the party into another trap after this and runs off again. The next time we see her, she's being kidnapped by Cornerio's men, who also kidnap Elena, and now the party and the Turks have to work together to stop Cornerio. Confronting Cornerio in the mountains of Wutai, Cornerio plans on making Yuffie and Elena his new brides, but that freak is not getting what he wants. He unleashes his new pet, a bird-like creature who's actually pretty easy to take down, even without materia. When the creature is defeated, Reno comes and delivers the final blow to Cornerio, leaving him with one last quip before dropping that bastard to the ground below, presumably killing him. The Turks are kind of the odd ones out in terms of enemies, as they really aren't evil, and are more so doing their job just because it's their job. That's why they work with Cloud to complete their mission. However, next time they meet, they will be on opposite sides. As for Yuffie, she returns the materia to the party and joins back. Yeah, she has a pretty weak character arc here, with most of her story not even revolving around her. But her main concern really is Wutai and restoring its former legacy, even if she just wants to hog all the materia. There's another side quest here involving her that you may want to do later because of its difficulty. This is the Pagoda Tower, a test of Yuffie's skill. It's a series of 5 fights, each getting harder than the next, where you play as only Yuffie. You'll need to set Yuffie up with the right equipment and material so she can survive the status effects the enemies bring. This is one of the harder areas of the game, especially when Yuffie's father Godo comes in as the final boss of the tower and can turn you into a toad, which pretty much makes you useless in battle. And this thing will not wear off unless you have the right equipment, which you might not have until later in the game. Upon defeating Godo, we receive the Leviathan summon materia, which is only given to those who complete the Pagoda Tower. And we get the rest of Yuffie's character arc as she confronts her father about why he turned Wutai into a tourist trap, especially since he was this strong, to which he says that it was all to protect Wutai from Shinra's destruction after the war. Now, after seeing his daughter's strength, he realized that both determination and strength are needed to help Wutai survive. It's a nice message, but you definitely can tell the development had to cut corners in Yuffie's story. We can only imagine how much more development she would have gotten had she been mandatory. Upon leaving the tower, Godo tells Yuffie to bring back the materia from the party when the fight is over against Sephiroth, and gives Yuffie her final limit. This is the end of the back-to-back character moments in this section of the game, and while not everyone here got developed story-wise, their strength did, because by this point we've been given so many options to level up and get stronger materia and limits, which are very important for the next couple of sections. Now, you shouldn't have to grind too much in FF7, or at all really. It's only if you want to access side stuff to get overpowered, which in my case, draw stuff for this video, I had to. Luckily, cheats on the HD re-releases make this less time consuming. Cheats like Speed Up or God Mode really help progress the grinding. I know, using cheats takes away from the original experience, but I guarantee you it's still time consuming either way. The first task I went back and did was actually going back to fight the Midgar Zolom. You can actually beat him this time, but the real goal here is to get his enemy skill, as it does a lot of damage at early levels. There are other enemies who give good enemy skills that you can farm at this point. If you want to grind levels earlier on, you could also go back to Junon Harbor and fight the enemies in this hallway. These enemies are actually supposed to be on disc 2, so they are a lot harder, but they give you a lot of XP. This is good if you want to get Vincent, because his boss can be very challenging on the levels you're supposed to be on. And it also helps leveling up Yuffie to get past the Pagoda Towers. In fact, this is actually a section where bosses start to get a lot harder than before. Overall, brute force won't help much if you're at their level. Most will require some strategy with either having certain equipment or certain material to make the fight easier. This is how difficulty is handled, but if you grind even a little, you should be able to handle most fights fine. However, if you want to get the most out of your characters, you're gonna have to put some time, namely with the limits. So as I stated earlier, limits have different levels to them. Each level has 2 separate limits for every character except for Kate, Sif, and Vincent, as they work differently. In order to get the second limit in the limit level, you'll need to use the first limit 8 times, which is not a problem. You'll naturally get to that. However, in order to get the next level limit, you'll need to get a certain amount of kills with each character. The number of kills gets lower with how late a party member joins. For instance, Vincent, Sid, Yuffie, and Kate Sif have to kill less than the rest of the party. And in Cloud's case, you should be able to reach the 3rd level limit without grinding, but there's still a problem. You see, with so many party members, you'll always be swapping out members, and even if you have them on the field, it doesn't mean that they will get a kill. However, throughout most of the game, Cloud cannot be removed, so you'll always have him there, and he's strong, so you should be getting a lot of kills with him. You'll need to grind for the others, which makes sense, right? No problem. However, there's one character where this becomes a problem. Aerith. Yes, Aerith. She's the only dedicated healer in the party, and as such, her physical attack strength is low. So in most fights with her, she's there as support and not for killing, and yet she has to get 80 kills to get her 2nd level limit and 80 more kills to get her 3rd level limit. For reference, Cloud has to get 120 kills to get his 2nd level limit, which is not too far off from Aerith. Most of her biggest damage from materia, but at this point in the game, there isn't any godly materia that's good for wiping enemies, at least on your level. So by the time you get to this point in the game, I doubt many players would even have a level 2 limit unlocked yet. Therefore, you need to grind. I found an easy method of adding Boltwood and all materia on Aerith and going back to Mental Mines and having her kill low level enemies in one shot. And this method proved effective and can be very quick, but damn, what a detour. I ended up doing the same thing with all of my characters and got them to level 3 limits at this point, which took about 3 to 4 hours with a speed up. Again, most of that was unnecessary for now, but I bet at some point you need to do this later on. But you need to get Aerith here right now. But you might be asking, didn't I mention final limits earlier? Yes, I did. Final limits are obtained in the world and not from leveling. For instance, when you get the key to Vince's room, you get Naki's final limit, and doing the Pagoda Tower side quest gives you Yuffie's final limit. The point is that most of the final limits have stipulations to get them. However, in order to actually learn these final limits, you'll need to have already obtained both level 3 limits. Now you're seeing why it's important to level up limits, but Aerith especially needs this now, but of course actually obtaining the final limit is some complicated shit. So near the Mithril Mines, there's this old man who's sleeping in the cave that you can only reach with the buggy. Okay, who cares? Well, this guy has an important item needed to get Aerith's final limit. In order to get this item, which is Mithril, you'll need to have a number of battles where the last 2 digits of a 3-digit number needs to be odd. Think having fought like 199 or 233 battles. So if you're on the 220s or the 200s, you're gonna have to get out of that whole section of numbers. Pretty ridiculous, right? But whatever, you get it from that stupid old man. But how do you use it? Well, you need to go on the side of this island to find a house where you can trade this mithril for Aerith's final limit, which you can actually miss if you open the wrong chest. You gotta open the small one, and if you mess up, well, there goes the limit. Now that is some ridiculous cryptic 90s logic for getting an item. All of this makes Aerith one of the most frustrating characters to grind out. But I will say, she has some of the strongest limits in the game. Like man, they don't do damage, but they might as well be a game win screen. You start out with simple healing and magic restoration spells, but she then gets the ability to restore limits and make all party members invincible. But her final limit, Great Gospel, does all of this except the limit part. Yes, full health, magic restoration, and invincibility at the same time. She may look like an angel, but to the enemies, she's the devil. Sounds like all that work was worth it, right? But why do you have to do it all now, when you could do it later? Well, if you already played the game, you know what's coming. Earlier, I talked about how each character had their own area in the game for their development. However, Aerith has multiple, from Midgar to Gongaga to small parts in different areas throughout the game. But this section in particular, it's probably the most dedicated one to her character. Back in Cosmo Canyon during the campfire, you could talk to everyone, and if you talked to Aerith, she would be struggling to deal with her role as an ancient. a role she never asked for and yet she has to suffer the consequences of. Her mother taken from her, her boyfriend murdered, and she was monitored her whole life over this. So when she says, "I'm the only Cetra," it really makes an impact because no matter what Cloud or the other do, they never have to be put in this role or have to go to the specific trials that she has to go through. And yeah, they'll be there for her, but they can't be what she is, and they can't truly understand why she feels so alone. So when she has these intimate moments with Cloud, it's like she's desperate to find someone to relate with, even if she knows that something's wrong with Cloud. This takes us back in the story where the party goes back to the Golden Saucer to get the key to the Temple of the Ancients. And we finally get to experience the Battle Square, this time without all those people dying. The Battle Square is like a tournament arena of the game, where you go through a series of about 8 fights with a stipulation being applied after each battle, like halving your health. You don't have to win right now, but the prizes that this arena gives out will be integral for the end game, so prepare well. When you obtain the key to the Temple of the Ancients, you didn't realize you're forced to stay at the Golden Saucer as the exit is broken. However, before Cloud heads to sleep, someone comes in this room looking for a date, and that someone is Tifa. Okay, so there's an actual dating point system throughout the early game. This is where many of those open response questions went towards. There are 4 date candidates: Aerith, Tifa, Yuffie, and Barrett. Yeah, if you treat all the girls like shit, Barrett will come knocking. However, it's less of a date and more of a bros just hanging out, with many of the stuff that would happen on a date not happening. Like Barrett asking what girl Cloud likes and him shooting at the fireworks from the gondola. It's a really funny scenario. All 4 characters have a point meter, with Aerith starting out with the highest, and by doing certain actions with the character, you can raise those point values until one of them is at the top. In my case, I got Tifa, which is fine for me because she's the best girl, but the actual canonical date is Aerith, and I needed her for the story. The events of the day will always be the same with the girls. You go watch the play which you participate in, and then you ride around the Golden Saucer. It's here on the ride where the difference comes in, as each girl holds different dialogue. Tifa struggles to open up her real feelings for Cloud. Yuffie kisses Cloud to get his attention, but he responds with nothing. And Aerith has the most dialogue out of everyone. She tells Cloud how similar he and her boyfriend are, and then she says she wants to meet the real him, almost as if the Cloud we know isn't who Cloud really is. After what happened in Nibelheim and the constant breakdowns throughout the game, it's clear that something is definitely up with Cloud. The mood of the date immediately wears off, however, when the two see Cait Sith running away in the lobby, only to see him toss the key to the Temple of the Ancients to the Turks. That's right, the spy that they suspected all along was Cait Sith. It'd be easy to clobber him now, but Cait Sith is not even a real person, rather a toy being controlled by his master at Shinra. And to make matters worse, they actually captured Marlene. So now Cait Sith is forcing them to keep him in the party until they reach the Temple of the Ancients. This guy is already the worst party member gameplay wise, but his story now is not helping him either. Going along with Cait Sith, the next day the party heads to the Temple of the Ancients after Shinra arrives. The Temple of the Ancients is probably the most complicated dungeon in the game, and it stands as the area for both Cait Sith and Aerith's development. Right as we arrive, Aerith is already hearing voices from the temple as if her ancestors are finally trying to reach her. However, once we get inside, we find another adversary has arrived beside Shinra, saying one of the Turks is lying on the ground injured after being stabbed by Sephiroth. Great, as if this wasn't already a tense situation. He gives us the keystone to get in the temple, and bro, what the hell is this shit? I wasn't lying when I said this was the most complicated dungeon in the game, and this is the only near the halfway point. With all these stairs and layers, it can become really hard to tell where you're supposed to go. Adding on to this is random encounters, which makes this whole section pretty tedious. There is a guide of sort for these little purple dudes who lead you to different areas of the temple, each with their own trial or puzzle of some sort. These range from navigating temple traps to memorization minigames. Each time you talk to one of these purple guys, they can restore your health and magic, and Aerith learns something new about her ancestors, or we see what happened to the temple before we got there. These purple guys are actually the last remnants or ghosts of Aerith's ancestors. So this is kind of their final message of guiding Aerith to her destiny. This is also where we see Sephiroth's true plans. Sephiroth wants to fuse with the planet and destroy everything, much like what his mother, Jenova, wanted. The last puzzle in the temple is this clock where you have to find the right door by changing the time on it. This area also holds Aerith's ultimate weapon, something other party members will not get until later in the game. These are the best weapons for that character, and you usually come with some gimmicks. Eris allows her to gain a 2x bonus on her attacks when both characters are KO, which it's kinda useless considering she's the healer and most of the other characters will be healed. Completing the clock puzzle sends us to an area where the mural is located with Sephiroth waiting for us. Sephiroth explains how he's going to take over the planet. You see, when the planet suffers an injury like an explosion, it uses the light stream to heal itself. However, this process can take a lot of energy and time. But if the planet were to face an injury that would be life-threatening, then they would use up all of its life energy to fix it. The temple holds the black materia, known as the ultimate destruction materia. In using it, Sephiroth plans to injure the planet to a fatal point and fuse with it, fulfilling his mother's wish and gaining the power of a god, ruling over everyone's souls in the life stream, as if this guy wasn't already powerful. And Cloud's reaction to this plan is very creepy. Sephiroth was already phasing in and out, but Cloud starts having a breakdown and an identity crisis, questioning himself until he snaps back like nothing's happened. This is the worst breakdown so far, and most of these seem to happen when Sephiroth was around or mentioned. There's not enough time to think about that because the next boss is already on his way. A red dragon, which is a variant of the dragon that we saw back in Nibelheim. Defeating him will drop the Bahamut summon materia. This guy is special as he comes in 3 variants, each one stronger than the next. He's also one of my favorite summons in the game. The black materia can also be accessed now, but at a cost. As a last measure of defense, the black materia will trap the one who takes it inside along with the temple itself, meaning someone has to stay behind, looking for a way to redeem himself and also the only one who's not truly alive. Cait Sith volunteers to be the one who takes it, which means losing him in the process. However, Cait Sith starts to bring out traits of being sentient, as if he has a soul himself, so this kinda is a real sacrifice. But before he can take it, the others have to escape, but a wall monster is blocking the way. He's strong, but not strong enough for Great Gospel, which comes in to carry everyone from his high damaging attacks. I'd say that all that grinding was worth it for here at least. Once defeating the wall monster, Cait Sith leaves one last fortune for Cloud and Aerith before leaving to get the materia, with his last message being thanking the party for believing in him despite him being a spy, and that he's finally going to be able to save the planet. It's kinda sad and also implies that Cait Sith did have sentience, and yet even in the face of death, he's still acting just like how he found them, happy and full of joy. This Cait Sith is actually the third, but it seems that each one has their own soul, but are controlled by Reeve. For someone who's supposed to be a comic relief character and just betrayed us earlier, they can bring out emotion in this moment. You kind of feel bad for the guy because he truly wanted to do the right thing, and maybe even Reeve is conflicted between these two things. Earlier when he gave the Turks the black materia, he wondered why the party went through their actions despite having no reward, no money, no fame or praise for it. And I think he understands that there are some things that are bigger than that. I mean, that's part of Reeve's character. That's kind of what makes him better than some of the other heads of Shinra that are working there, because they seem to be playing evil and just want everything for themselves. But Reeve, or Cait Sith at least, wants to change. In the aftermath, a huge crater is left where the temple was, and the black materia is there too, but before the party can get away with it, Sephiroth comes back and in a horrific scene, he commands and controls Cloud to give him the black materia. All the player can do is watch and use Cloud's child self to stop him from trying to give Sephiroth the materia, and yet it's not effective. This scene always sends chills down my spine. If it wasn't obvious already, these mental breakdowns are more than just trauma from Nibelheim, but are something brought out about Sephiroth's control, which is even more scary. Sephiroth leaves with the black materia, and Cloud freaks out when he realizes what he's done, and then another Cait Sith comes out and knocks out Cloud. Yeah, he's back immediately after his death, and as comical as ever, which might make that speech kind of pointless until you think about how each one has their own sentience. So that does mean that Cait Sith at least died and maybe transferred the memories into the other Cait Sith that just came here, which is why he knows everything and remembers everything that's happened. It's still kind of sad, but at the same time, it's not too heartbreaking. We then get a glimpse into Cloud's dream in which Aerith appears, telling him to take care of himself and that she'll stop Sephiroth alone. Only a Cetric can counter Meteor apparently, and Aerith's already heading to the City of the Ancients, where this act can be done. She then runs off with Cloud trying to catch her, but he can't follow her. Sephiroth then appears, warning Cloud that she will be a problem and that she'll need to be removed. So not only can Sephiroth control Cloud, but he can also access his dreams, even maybe his memories, Eric is in deep trouble. Cloud wakes up to find that Eric did leave and tells the party to head to the City of the Ancients, which is on the North Island. Though Cloud is afraid of being controlled again, but the party reassures him that they will be there if that happens. The City of the Ancients is located beyond the forest that loops unless you have an item known as Lunar Harp. This is where the dig site comes in as you play a guessing game to find out where the harp is. If you don't have a guide, you'll probably be stuck here wasting gil until you find the right spot. It's really Pacific too, one of the worst minigames in the game. Once you get past the forest, you finally enter the city, and immediately upon entry there is this sense of dread in the atmosphere. This once thriving city made to be built within the planet is now empty and devoid of life. There are no random encounters, just the remains of the beings that lived here. Adding to the atmosphere is the music. Aptly titled, You Can Hear the Cry of the Planet, as if the souls that resided here are still calling to you. Deeper in the city, the party is able to find Aerith safe, thankfully. Oh shit. I can't even move him. Cloud, for some reason, cannot stop himself from aiming his sword at Eric, leaving the player to try to force him to stop. Only with every button pressed, Cloud gets closer and closer to cutting her. Luckily, Cloud is able to snap out of it before he This is the moment that shocked the world. Aerith murdered by Sephiroth, and Cloud and even the players at this point, rage and despair take over. Aerith will no longer talk, no longer laugh, cry, or get angry. What about us? What are we supposed to do? All of this happens while Sephiroth still gloats over his victory, denying that Cloud has any real feelings at all. Because to him, and maybe even to us after what just happened, Cloud is just a puppet. In a desperate struggle, the party and even the player at this point tries to kill Jenova quickly and keep some hope that Aerith is still alive, but it was over all along. Aerith is dead. Aerith was not the first death in an RPG, nor was she the first death in a Final Fantasy game, but her death and life were made to matter. During development, it was decided that a party member would die. Nomura was the one that pushed the idea because he was tired of how death was portrayed in previous Final Fantasies. You see, in most media, death of protagonists are portrayed as more heroic, sacrificial deaths. It's sad because they did it, but there's a sense of pride in how they went out. However, Aerith's death was not meant to have that effect at all. Her life was stolen. She never planned to die or wanted to die. You can tell even then she was afraid because of what she said to Cloud and Cosmo Canyon and how she was acting in the Temple of the Ancients. And yet, with that fear, she took the initiative to try and save the planet on her own, so the party, specifically Cloud, would not get hurt. However, she wanted to come back. This wasn't some ultimate sacrifice. It was a role that was placed on her at birth, and Sephiroth just happened to be there to kill her. That's why her death is so iconic and so depressing, because she was gone. There wasn't even a big rivalry she had with Sephiroth. That was really the first time they had a true conflict, specifically with each other. Cloud and Tifa had more of a reason to fight him, and yet she had to die. You know, I saw this scene a lot before I actually played the game, and yet when I got here, it still managed to move me, and I didn't want to go into the section knowing what would happen. I was on the brink of tears when I first played this, even though I knew it was going to happen. That is how powerful this scene is when you play through the game fully. Going back to before you get to the scene, you'll notice some things. For one, as I pointed out, the atmosphere of the city is very ominous and cold. There is no trial to go through. You just have to reach Aerith, and right before you reach her, there's a save point, which made a lot of people think that you could save her by reloading the save. So they went back only to find that it was a hopeless effort. She really is gone, and if you go on the party select menu, her spot is always there, empty. No longer is there a dedicated healer, so players would have to change their strategy in battle, leaning on the restore material more than ever. No one had limits like Aerith did, so all the support is gone. It's not just the story that's affected by this, it's the gameplay too. It makes you feel that Aerith's death mattered, or rather, Aerith's life mattered, and that's something I want you to keep in mind for the rest of the video. Not looking at the death, but what someone brought to life, because that's what the developers wanted too. And what's even more interesting is that Aerith's theme is very sad, but Uematsu was going to make it even sadder once he realized what they were using the theme for. This is just her general theme. He didn't realize it was being used for her death scene, which is still ironic that it sounds so sad, and yet it still fits in both her life and death. If you thought this was the lowest point, then you're in for something much worse. From the City of the Ancients until halfway until this 2, I would say that this is the darkest section of the game. I actually played this whole section in one sitting, even though I would only play one area per session on my first playthrough, because I was not satisfied with the events of the story. Not that the story was bad or anything, but so much was happening that I needed to know how the party overcame this and how they could even survive this. The path to the Northern Crater takes us to the harshest environment on the planet, not just in the weather but also in the enemies. If you notice how the map of FF7 is designed, the enemies get stronger the closer you are to Northern Crater, and the civilization appears less and less. This could be because of Jenova's influence that the monsters are stronger combined with the harsher environment, which is less habitable than humans. This is a smart design decision as enemies stay at the same level in lower level areas, and explains why it's not so simple to just leave Midgar. The only area of civilization is the Icicle Inn, which has some similar influence with this lab that was used by their scientists. You can watch some old tapes here that show the backstory of Aerith's mother and her birth. Aerith's mother, Alphina, willingly helped Professor Gas in his research with Cetra. We learned from her that a calamity, which was Jenova, fell from the sky and caused a huge wound in the planet, that being the Northern Crater. The Cetra tried to heal the planet, but it took longer than they could manage. Jenova was said to then appear to them disguised as friends and family, but it would give them a virus, turning them into the monsters that we see in the world. Again, explaining why they're so powerful here and why monsters are all over the place. The final videos are the most disturbing, where Alphina explains that as long as Jenova is around, the planet can't fully heal. so the planet develops Weapon as a defense on its own. Luckily, the sets were able to confine Jenova before Weapon could be used. There's some footage and audio of Aerith's birth as Gas would fall in love with Inferno and try to help her, but it was all set up by Hojo wanting to have a child so that he could have another test subject. Hojo has Gas killed when he tries to defend Alfina and kidnaps both her and Aerith. Damn, even at birth, Aerith lived through tragedy. And all of that was optional to look at. The way to the crater is just as cold as the tapes. We start out snowboarding down this mountain. Fun this minigame is, but cool borders this isn't. But it does enough to be enjoyable. Once you shred down the mountain, you're open to explore the Great Glacier, which has many areas you can get lost in. There's a map to tell you what your area you're in, but in my case, it's not much help. You tread through the snowfields until you reach the mountain and start exploring the ice caves. As you scale it, you really feel how tough it is to navigate this area with the rough terrain and strong enemies that appear. The party is able to scale the harsh mountains and finally enter the Northern Crater. The center of the planet where Titans roam. This is definitely the most dangerous area on the planet, even with areas in the crater cracking because the light stream held within. As the party is closer to the center, they start seeing more hooded figures collapsing through the cavern, all of them heading towards the same area. These are the same hidden figures that would appear in Nibelheim. These guys also appear in places earlier in the game. You can even spot them even back in Midgar. They are all related to the reunion theory that Hojo was talking about. As we come to find out, as we're confronted by Sephiroth again, who drops another piece of Jenova for the party to fight. Upon defeating Jenova, it drops the black materia, which Tifa decides to leave behind with one of the party members so it can't get closer to Sephiroth. And what follows is probably one of the most disturbing sections of the game. Sephiroth is able to cast a projection of Nibelheim to mess with Cloud, or so we think. Sephiroth shows the beginning of the Nibelheim events we saw earlier, except Cloud is not here. Instead, it's a guy with black hair wearing the same outfit as Cloud. It's then explained by Sephiroth that Cloud was never in the Nibelheim incident. Rather, he was created by Hojo as the incomplete Sephiroth clone made of Jenova cells. Tifa tries to reassure Cloud, but even she doesn't know if her memories are true. The final nail hits the coffin when Sephiroth shows the picture that was taken in the flashback, and Cloud is not there at all. If you remember, this picture was taken during the flashback section, so what the hell is going on? Cloud begins to have a breakdown, and with no one to give him an answer, he becomes the puppet that Sephiroth said he was. It's disturbing because even at this point, the player is questioning just who the hell they've been playing as this whole time. Have he been lied to this whole time? Meanwhile, Shinra makes his way to the core of the planet where Weapon is stored. They put all their energy into finding the promised land, and it wasn't even what they imagined. Instead, it's just where the weapon resides, and it awakens if sensing an imminent danger. Cloud then appears out of nowhere and states that the reunion will begin before receiving the black materia from whatever party member you gave it to. Only, that's not a real party member. It's actually Sephiroth controlling another clone in disguise. Every one of those hooded figures we've seen were all failed clones or failed Jenova experiments that Sephiroth could take control of. The real Sephiroth was always here in the center of the planet waiting for someone to bring him the black materia, but you would have never thought that Cloud would be the one to give it. Cloud apologizes for not living up to the true Cloud and even begs Hojo to give him a number, to give him some other purpose for existing besides being a clone, but Hojo casts him aside. It's then that Cloud begins to monologue as Tifa desperately tries to reach him, only for him to not listen at all. We have no control over Cloud at this point, and we the player can only watch in horror as our hero fulfills his role as a puppet, giving Sephiroth the black materia. summoned. The weapons have been unleashed on the earth. Everything is going to die. And Cloud? Well, Cloud is the Cloud we knew is gone. That seemed like the lowest point in the game, didn't it? But it only gets worse from here. We don't even play as Cloud anymore, instead waking up as Tifa locked up with Barret. It's been a week since the events of the Northern Crater. Sephiroth has shielded himself in the crater and Rufus is trying to fight him off while also dealing with the weapons who are rampaging on the planet. And if that wasn't bad enough, the meteor is getting closer and closer to the planet day by day. The Earth's days are numbered, and so are our heroes. As Rufus plans to take Tifa and Barret and have them executed as a way to blame them for the problem to calm the people down. It gets more depressing having to control Tifa and Barret as they get guided to their execution, with Tifa even being put in a gas chamber. Oh, she gonna have to pay for that. When all hope is lost, the execution is held off by weapon, specifically Sapphire weapon, which allows Cait Sith to reveal himself from the disguise to free Barret. How ironic, the former spy has now saved the leader of the terrorist group. They both fight through Shinra's forces and try to find a way to get to Tifa's chamber, but that bitch Scarlet already started the gas. Luckily, Tifa is able to use a key dropped by those idiots to free herself, but she's still jammed in. Sapphire weapon still attack Junon, grazing the area where Tifa is held, and we finally get to see that Junon cannon be put to use. Damn! That guy's dead. Tifa is able to escape but is confronted by Scarlet, and we then get the start of the most satisfying minigame in the game, slapping the shit out of Scarlet. I tried to time my slaps right, but I ended up messing up, but you can win and knock her ass down where she starts to cry. For all the stuff she did, this cat fight was only a taste of her punishment, but Scarlet, being the coward she is, brings some Shinra goons to help her take out Tifa. But the party was able to hijack the Highland with everyone back except for Cloud, so Tifa becomes the leader, even though she's still traumatized by the recent events, and we're able to use the most powerful mode of transportation, flight. With the Highland, we soar through the... What the hell? Oh no, man. Why this music? This is the same music that's played when we enter the Northern Crater. No longer will we hear the previous overworld music, but instead this dreadful track, and I freaking hate it. I get it, you can see the meteor in the sky, so having that old music wouldn't fit the looming threat, but damn, this makes me want to not move at all. I dread navigating the overworld at this point because of this music, and honestly, it's a great feeling. It's a great thing to feel. It makes the situation feel more dire with the gameplay, as you're not even safe anywhere on the overworld. It also feels dire since we're missing our main character, Cloud, with Tifa being the leader much like how Cloud was. You can't remove her from the party and you have to use her on the overworld. You can also do side quests with her even without Cloud, but the main goal is finding him, which you can either ask around or head straight to Midgar if you know where you're going. This is where it was said someone was washed up by a light stream, that person being Cloud, and when Tifa hears that, she rushes to find him, only to come to this. That's right, our protagonist, the hero of the story, the person we thought we knew, Cloud, has been reduced to a comatose state, not being able to say or do anything, not knowing who he is or why he is here. The Cloud that we knew is gone. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the lowest point in the game. Despite all the death and the world being in chaos, I think seeing the hero essentially lost is the most horrifying event in the game. In most stories, a hero will take a huge loss but never lose themselves, giving some hope to the audience and the character in the story. But in FF7, it takes that hope that will be had and crushes it completely. And the music that starts when we see Cloud in the state always sends chills down my spine. Cloud in this state, Tifa decides to stay behind and take care of him, leaving the leadership role to Barrett, except he doesn't even know what to do next. He has to ask the party, to which they find out that Shinra is planning to gather the giant materia, something that Scarlet mentioned earlier back in Gongaga. And in a moment of growth, Barrett actually gives Sid the leader role as he sees himself as unfit after his actions throughout the game. Barrett realizes he's not the best leader considering what happened with Avalanche and what happened to Corral. None of that was fully his fault, but he never had a good plan for these situations, and both led to the deaths of people that he cared about. Sid, however, has been piloting the Highwind and gathered a crew to work for him, and he's the oldest, so that shows how much responsibility he has. Sid works as a leader much like how Cloud and Tifa were when they were leaders. He can still do side quests and minigames, and his sprite will be on the overworld. The two areas you need to go to are Corral and Fort Condor. At Corral, the party tries to capture the huge materia before Shinra. However, Shinra escapes with the materia on a train, which is headed to destroy New Corral. The party boards another train to catch up and stop them before it reaches Corral, and you have to fight a gauntlet of enemies under a time before the train crashes. And yes, the train can crash, and will actually make it harder to get items, and you will not be able to gain the huge materia. Yeah, that's the thing with the story items in this section. You can actually lose in the Shinra, and it will cost you. But Corral say the residents consider Barrett a hero and redeeming his past actions to them. You can also receive his final limit here, Catastrophe, which is an accurate description for what's happening to the enemies during it. The second huge materia is located at Fort Condor, where you have to play the tower defense again, or for the first time. The minigame still sucks, and I just give up and let the enemy come up so I can beat him faster. However, beating it this time will show the Condor's egg hatch on top of the fort, giving you not only the huge materia, but the Phoenix Summon materia, which can revive all allies and damage the enemy. This will be very useful in the end game. Once the party successfully gets 2 of the huge materia, they decide to head back to Midgar to see if Cloud's got any better, but it turns out he hasn't. Cloud is going to need more than a few days off. As the party ponders what else they can do, Midgar is suddenly attacked, this time by Ultimate Weapon, and there's no Junon cannon to stop him, so we have to fight him ourselves. The weapons are nothing to play around with. If you're not careful, you will die in an instant, so it's a good thing you only need to hold him off for now and not fully fight him. However, his attack caused Lightstream to burst on the ground, sinking Midgar, taking Cloud and Tifa along with it. Up until this point, Cloud has been a very weird character. He's definitely cool and plays that hero part, but Something has always been off since the first mission. The constant mental breakdowns, him switching personalities, and him being controlled by Sephiroth set in that Cloud is not who he says he is. He's an unreliable narrator, which is something that's more scary coming from our main protagonist. But why was he acting like this? Was he really a clone? Well, this section answers everything, and honestly, it's my favorite moment in the story. While in the live stream, Tifa is able to access Cloud's mind, and together they walk through and piece his real memories back together. Cloud wasn't as tough as he claimed himself to be. Although he wanted to protect people like Tifa, he always considered himself weak, but he would still try to do brave things. When Tifa's mother died, she tried to climb the treacherous Mount Nebel, thinking that she was on the other side of the mountain. However, she would fall, but Cloud was right behind her to protect her, but he wouldn't make it in time, leaving Tifa getting hurt. He also did have a conversation with Tifa about him going to join Soldier. However, the thing is, Cloud never joined Soldier. Again, he wasn't as strong as his contemporaries, and he would serve as regular infantry. The man that we saw in Cloud's memories in Nibelheim was Zack, Cloud's friend, and as Sephiroth showed earlier, Cloud was not there, or so we thought. Turns out Cloud was in Nibelheim, but he never showed his face because he was embarrassed about not being in Soldier. He was there when they investigated the reactor. He was there when the town was burned down, and in a twist of fate, he was there to stop Sephiroth. You see, the memories that were told in Calm were all from Zack's perspective, but Zack did not beat Sephiroth that day. Cloud did. Cloud, despite being weaker than Zack, despite not being a soldier, was able to stop Sephiroth that day and throw him into the live stream, and he was able to keep his promise to Tifa and protect her. It's when this moment is revealed that everything is pieced together, and both him and Tifa wash up on shore and reunite with the party. On the High Wind, Cloud tells everyone the truth about his past, and we learn that after Nibelheim, Hojo experimented on him and injected him with Genova cells, which the combination of this and not being strong enough for Soldier allowed him to be controlled by Sephiroth. But that Cloud is gone, no longer tied to his imaginary world. He is now the real Cloud, and now he's going to fix everything that happened, because like Barrett said at the beginning, there's no getting off this train. With Cloud back, it feels like hope has finally returned to the atmosphere, and the game changes despite the current situation. It feels like there's still a chance of victory. Know that there will be victory, and nothing better reflects this, like when you go back to the overworld and the High Wind theme plays. No longer will the gloomy northern crater music play. Instead, a song of victory representing the High Wind will play, signaling that there is still a fight left to finish. However, if you go on the ground, you will still hear that music, which makes me want to avoid walking at all at this point. But back to Cloud's character. I know he calls himself weak, and even the devs described him as a weak hero because of his mental state, but I disagree. I think Cloud is one of the strongest heroes, not because of his physical strength, but what he has to deal with. In most stories, the biggest struggle a hero needs to overcome is a villain who may be stronger than them, but Cloud has to handle not only that, but loss and fixing his mental state. And yet, despite all of this, even though he needed to get help to keep going, he keeps walking towards a better future. A struggle where most would fail or give up, Cloud doesn't. And that's something not a lot of people can say that they did. It's hard to overcome despair, loss, and loneliness. But those who are able to overcome those trials and still push forward can inspire others to do so, or inspire others around them, just like Cloud brought back hope not only to the party, but to the player too. I think that is what makes the real Cloud a strong hero. And we also can't forget about Tifa too, who really kicked off the events of this story and really was the one to fully help Cloud restore his memories. We're going to go into her character later in the video when we get to another character moment she had. But for right now, just know that not only is Cloud's journey important, but Tifa's journey is as well. Now that the party's back together, we have entered what I like to call the Fall of Shinra arc. It starts with raiding the Junon underwater reactor, where something is off, but I can't quite put my finger on it. The party is trying to find another giant materia set to be here, which they end up running into this stupid boss fight. This robot is infamous for having devastating attacks and grabbing some of your party members and damaging them. It's best to take out the arms first before doing anything else so it won't capture you. If it does, it'll lead to a game over. This is also where you're able to get the final method of travel, the submarine, which is the ultimate water vehicle. Unfortunately, you have to play this last major minigame to get it, which is one of the worst in the game. Navigating the submarine in the battle minigame is as slow as traffic at 5 p.m. and you'll be praying that you hit another submarine in front of you before the controls cost you. Beating it will give you full access to the submarine and will tell you where the next giant materia is. Before we head there, we can explore underwater in the submarine where... oh shit. Yeah, let's just ignore that guy for now. But you can find the ancient key, which will be needed for later, and there's the sunken Galuka, which holds a rematch of Rude and Reno, and goddamn, they came back with a vengeance. I don't know if it's just me, but I found them very hard to fight at this point. In fact, this whole ship is full of enemies that will decimate you if you're not at their level. Keep in mind, I'm over leveled at this point. Cloud is nearly level 50 and the characters are still taking so much damage and game over. This is because 1, this area holds Cid's final limit, and 2, this is a good grinding area specifically for sources, but by far the most important thing you'll find in the sub is the Cave of Lucretia, the woman that Vincent loved and who he thought had died. Bringing Vincent here will trigger a flashback where we see the backstory of Vincent and how he not only lost his love for Lucretia, but also was killed by Hojo, trying to prevent Lucretia from being experimented on. We also find out Lucretia is Sephiroth's real mother. She considers herself guilty of not even being able to hold Sephiroth as a mother and has cast herself here as punishment, much how Vincent sat in the coffins for his punishment. She asks Vincent if Sephiroth is still alive, and to take away some of the burden of the situation, Vincent tells her that he's dead. Being an optional character, Vincent's story isn't explored too much, but he could be considered one of the more important party members to the world itself, considering his position before he died. He was going to be more important to the story, but again, he was made optional due to time constraints. But what he does have here is more impactful than what Yuffie has. This area is technically his area of the game, but he has one more if you choose to bring him to that section. You also get Vincent's ultimate weapon and final limit, Chaos. This is one of the strongest limits despite its limitations. It's like a true devil vampire form that can cast death to all enemies in one attack. Talk about crowd control. With Chaos, Vincent is so much more useful in battle, and he won't be outpowered by anyone. In fact, he'll probably just cause death on him. The area that the party returns to next is Rocket Town, where Shinra is planning on launching the rocket with a giant materia in it to stop Meteor. We know this is a waste of resources and go to the rocket to stop. Of course, Cid is important here as this section completes his character arc. When they get to the rocket, they have to fight Rude again, this time a lot easier than in the ship, and stop the rocket from launching, which they fail. But in doing this, Cid finally achieves his dream of going into space. He kinda seems at peace now, and his attitude changes a bit. The huge materia is locked behind a password which you may not know without a guide. You can guess, but you're on a time limit, so solving it on your own can be a bit frustrating, because failing here means you can fail to get the materia. When you grab the materia, the party is ready to get into the escape pod, but the ship malfunctions, causing an explosion that traps Cid. This malfunction is the tank that Shira warned him about years ago, and Cid realized that she was only trying to help him the entire time. Good thing she's on the ship to hear his apology and help him get unstuck. On the escape pod, Cid can finally take his dream in a bit and sees the planet. He comes to understand that the planet is like a small child that needs to be protected, especially from this angle. For the first time, he's looking past his own dream for his actions. Cid can be very unlikable with his introduction, but he really was just a bitter man who just wanted his dream, and from that perspective, you can understand his anger. And that's why once he went into space, he became a lot nicer and understanding. He's still a cranky old man, but he grew a bit, even at his age. Unfortunately, this isn't a good time to sightsee around the planet, as the rocket is still heading on a crash course to Meteor, which... does not end well. It's a good thing that huge material was not there, but now the situation is looking more dire than ever. This isn't an ordinary meteor. It's like a summoning. The meteor itself is a being, which is why it can't be destroyed by conventional means. But the citizens seeing this have given up hope, and Shinra seems to have run out of ideas. Our party, however, still tries to find a way to take it down, which leads them to asking Bugenhagen for help. It's here where Aerith comes back in the story, as the party wonders why she decided to leave and fight Sephiroth on her own. So they head back to the City of the Ancients. Before you go, if you have all the huge materia here, you are rewarded with the summon Bahamut Zero, the strongest Bahamut, and as you're about to see, saving the materia was worth it. That's always sick to watch. Returning to the City of the Ancients is what we needed the key for, that was underwater, and we come to find out that Aerith was casting Holy before her death. This is a materia she had with her all her life, and that was given to her by her mother. This is the material we see fall in the cutscene of her death. Holy is the ultimate counter to Meteor, and would be able to repel it from the earth, along with destroying anything that it sees as a threat to the planet, which could also be humans. Even beyond death, Aerith is still helping us. This was done on purpose. The whole concept of the live stream is supposed to be how people who leave us are still with us in some way, in some spirit or form. However, Holy is being blocked by Sephiroth, so in order for it to activate, he needs to be defeated. That's a lot to consider when saving the planet, but not much time is left, as Diamond Weapon is heading to destroy Midgar, which cannot be allowed right now. You have to fight Diamond Weapon much like you did Ultimate, but Diamond is kind of a pushover. Now, I'm around level 56, which is past what you really need to be fighting the final boss, so that could be a factor, or it could just be that he can't stand a catastrophe. We hold off Weapon for a bit, but it's futile, as Diamond keeps marching towards Midgar, which now has a Junon cannon attached to it. This is where it went. Rufus engages Diamond. In a double KO, both Diamond and Rufus are defeated and the barrier blocking Sephiroth in the Nord crater disappears. With Rufus gone, Shinra is in its last days as everyone is out for themselves, with Reed being the only one that wants to end this madness. Hojo making everything worse is sucking all the Malcolm out of Midgar and giving it to Sephiroth for his science. Heidegger and Scarlet still intend to be in our way. These guys are just evil. Shinra is in its last days. Everyone gathers to launch one final attack at this organization that caused every single struggle that we face in the game. This is the final raid on Midgar. The fall of Shinra begins. This section was originally going to be much darker. The development team originally wanted all but 3 characters, the ones in your party, to die at this section from the parachute fall. But thankfully, Nomura went against this as it would undermine the death of Eric. I agree, and thank God, because that would have made this section in the endgame much more harder than it needed to be. The Midgar returned to is much more corrupted than the previous version. The sky is red from Meteor's appearance, there are no citizens around, and the monsters here have all become much more deadlier to match your level. Hell has truly fallen on Midgar. In the sewers, you run into the first boss fight of the Gauntlet Turks. You can skip this fight if you've done the Wutai side quest earlier, because even they see it's pointless to fight right now because Shinra's dead, but you might want to fight them to get their items. These guys are not playing around this time. It took me for a shock how much damage they were doing, and I almost lost. Whether you let them go or fight, they will just run away in the end. From there, you got out of the sewers and have 2 options: continue to the Sister Ray or go to Shimmer Tower again. Now, why would you do that? Well, I forgot to say, this section of Midgar cannot be returned to, and of course they had to put important items here such as ultimate weapons for 2 of the characters. This shit is ridiculous. Why lock items away like that, especially in areas that aren't even mandatory? You have to look it up on the guide if you weren't curious. Kate Sif's ultimate weapon is all the way on the 63rd floor of the tower. What in the fuck, man? You essentially got to play this dungeon again as random encounters will still appear. And I don't even play this damn character. When you go back to the main path, you run into Scarlet and Heidegger, who have their ultimate weapon, Claude Prod, the weapon that would end Avalanche. This big behemoth has some deadly techniques to sealing off the materia and summons missiles, but it stands no chance against Vincent's Satan Slam. With the destruction of Prod Claude, Scarlet and Heidegger die with it, and we can now head to the Sister Ray where Hojo is. Before we get there, you better have Barrett in the party to get his ultimate weapon, because if you don't, the chest will not appear. This mess is so stupid. Now you want Barrett and Vincent for their dialogue with Hojo, but damn, why keep holding these items behind locked off areas? We finally confront Hojo, the most evil and vile out of all of our enemies. He's using the Sister Ray to give energy to Sephiroth for his science, knowing full well he's Sephiroth's father and not caring what happens to him or the planet. If it wasn't for Hojo, we probably wouldn't be here. Sephiroth would have not been born in the circumstances he was in, and maybe the planet and people wouldn't have suffered this much. This illusionary crime, as Cloud puts it, has affected many lives, and Hojo still does not care and is making the situation even worse. Vincent thought he should have been locked away and punished for his action, but as he comes to realize, Hojo was the one who should have slept all this time, and now his time has come. Hojo represents the embodiment of the destructive nature that can come from humans' exploitation of science and resources, so a course of his fight involves him evolving more and more into the monster that he truly is until he's unrecognizable for his human form. Compare that to Vincent, who throughout his faults and transformations kept his humanity. I really wish this game explored more of Vincent's story, and I know dirges exist, but as of this game, not much of his story is elaborated on. It's kind of a shame. At least we get to see Vincent get his payback as Hojo answers for his sins. Hojo defeated, the Sister Ray is stopped, and Midgar is finally free from the clutches of Shinra. Avalanche's mission is complete. Vincent is free from his curse, and the planet is one step closer to smiling again. Before we get to the end game, we need to discuss the final side quests that appear. You don't need to complete these to beat the final boss, but they will help. First, there are some areas you can return to with new items. These will unlock the remaining ultimate weapons and final limits for the characters. One of these includes getting the key to Midgar and getting Tifa's ultimate weapon from this machine. While here, you can also go back to Aerith's church where I guess it was just a vision, sadly. You can also go back to the Battle Square and get more important items like W Summon and Cloud's final limit, Omni Slash, aka the best limit in the game. The only thing that sucks about this is that you gotta stay here and grind points to get what you want, because if you leave, you'll lose all your points. You can also go back to Nibelheim and in the Shinra Mansion to see more of Cloud's backstory, or Zack's backstory. Here we see what happened between Hojo capturing Cloud and Cloud getting the Midgar. It was Zack who took him there and they were going to be mercenaries. Zack's kind of like a big brother to Cloud, or a mentor. He was going to help him get his footing in Midgar. Unfortunately, Zack and Cloud are hunted down by Shinra soldiers and Zack gets killed defending Cloud. Cloud picks up Zack's Buster Sword, and that is when the memories collided and Zack Cloud was made. Zack's backstory also feels a bit rushed and short. This was actually not in the original Japanese version due to time constraints, and only appeared in the international version as an optional cutscene. This is why getting to this cutscene is in such a weird state. Zack will later get his own game that explains his backstory fully, but again, we're only covering the original FF7 and this video is already long enough. There are also areas that hold powerful material like the ancient forest that are optional to go to. One of the saddest moments in the game is also optional. When you go back to Cosmo Canyon, you witness the death of Bugenhagen. After giving one last message to Red on his bedside, he disappears, leaving Red with a new reason to live and fight. Man, Red, why did you have to go through it like that? Now, if you played this before, you know the infamous side quest at the end game, the weapons and the golden chocobo. Let's go fight the weapons. Let's see, Ultimate Weapon is flying around trying to blow up cities. So let's take him out first. Now that we're near his level, he should be pretty easy to take down. It's chasing him around that's the problem. You get Cloud's ultimate weapon from doing this, which is the most powerful weapon in the game and can get Cloud to 9999 damage. Alright, we beat one, now there's two more to go. This should be easy. Let's fight Ruby Weapon. Okay, well, I'm just gonna ignore him for now. Let's go fight Emerald Weapon. He's been available since we got to the submarine, so maybe he's easier. This is not good. Yeah, we got a lot of work to do before we able to touch these guys. These guys are the real in-game bosses. They weren't added until the international version, so early Japanese players got lucky. But for us, Square decided just to say fuck us. Ruby Weapon and his tentacles can attack multiple times during turns and can apply status elements like Toad. He can also suck in party members and they are gone forever, and people consider this guy the easier one. Well, that's because Emerald makes him look like a McDonald's play place. Emerald has a beam that does damage equal to how much material you have equipped on everybody. He also has a timer because you're underwater and can attack up to 4 times per turn and hits hella hard. Holy shit. It's really starting to look like a hopeless situation, but there are exploits. However, getting these exploits will cause more pain and suffering. For the best exploit or greatest chance to defeat them, you'll need the 4 hidden materia, which are all on these unreachable islands unless you have a chocobo, a gold chocobo to be specific, as they can walk on any and all terrain, including water. But here's the deal, the task of getting that may be more tedious than fighting the weapons. You see, you need to breed about 6 chocobo if you're lucky in order to get what you want. And you'll need to farm some enemies for certain items to give them your certain colored chocobo. You need to make a green and a blue chocobo from mating a regular chocobo together, and then mate those chocobo to make a black chocobo. Then go find a special yellow chocobo to get a gold one. All while taking the chocobo to the golden saucer to race and get them a higher license so you can have a better chance of getting the right color. Oh, and you need to go back to the chocobo stage too to get grass to help boost your chocobo skill in the race. That is a lot of repetition, and it isn't even guaranteed. For instance, getting the blue and green chocobo are the worst because you gotta get the right genders. You may get a green and blue, but they're both girls. Even after resetting your game, the gender won't change. You just gotta drop that chocobo and try breeding again. But that is only after 10 random battles. So if the game decides not to help you, you're going to be doing all that over again, as well as going to the golden saucer, which you can't land in, by the way. You have to go through Corral and watch the cutscene and run back to the racing section, then go back. I spent about 5 hours my playthrough just on this side quest. I get they wanted to have some extra content, but god damn, it could have been much less tedious. But was this all worth it? Well, yeah. Walking around with the chocobo alone makes the world map much better because that dreadful music is finally gone and replaced with chocobo overworld music. And this guy can go anywhere. The Highwind took you up the skies, but you cannot land everywhere, while this chocobo can walk all over, even in water. This really is the ultimate mode of transportation. You'll use this guy to go to the materia cave and gain the 4 ancient materia, that being Quadra Magic, Mime, HP to MP, and the greatest reward, the strongest summon in the game, Knights of the Round. I'm just gonna let the summon speak for itself. Now that's the ultimate destruction. As powerful as Knights of the Round is, it alone will not help us defeat the weapons. We'll need some more materia, some which are in the final dungeon, and then we'll need to grind to max level. Now this is where the sources come in because max level does not equal max stats. Instead, sources fill that gap. Now source farming is hella tedious and hard. The best area for it being the Sunken Garunka, where enemies will still fold you even at max level. So just use your sourcing sparingly. As for grinding, you can do that fast in the final dungeon. These pots give a ton of XP if you give them an elixir, which can be duplicated easily using the W item glitch. Doing that for about 3 hours got most of my characters to max level. So after that and getting the necessary material from the final dungeon, it's finally time to beat the weapons. But there's one more thing to beat Emerald's time limit. We need the underwater material, which is gained from the underwater reactor and morphing the ghost ship into a guidebook, and going to this old man in Calm and getting the underwater material. This is also where you get the reward for beating the other weapons. Now we are ready. This is the absolute extent of the materia system. You see, with the materia mine, any attack just used can be repeated without magic cost, and that includes summons, and having the counter materia with mine will cause mine to automatically be used as a counter to any attack. And with the HP absorb materia equipped with Knights of the Round, anytime it's activated, I gain HP, and with W summon, I can summon 2 summons in one battle. Jesus, I sound like I'm in a Yu-Gi-Oh battle. Anyway, let's take on Ruby Weapon. I had to kill my other party members before the fight so Ruby wouldn't suck anyone in the sand trap, but we only need one person for this. With the combination of the material listed above and paralyzing Ruby with Hades, Ruby Weapon's downfall is imminent. What? Alright, screw it. I'm gonna go fight him with Weapon. With this strat, surely he can't beat this. What the hell? Alright, even if you do all that, sometimes the weapons will just say fuck it and force a win for them. In other words, they can ignore the rules, but not today, motherfuckers. It's time to die.
Go, go! You can do it! You can do it all night long! Push! Push!
Total annihilation. Okay, so with the weapons defeated, you can bring the items that you have back to the old man in Calm, and he'll give you rewards. The first thing he'll give you is a gold chocobo for beating Ruby. Wow, what a useless item now. But the ultimate reward he gives for beating Emerald Weapon is the Master Materia. Master Magic, Master Command, and Master Summon. All 3 of these contain every skill and spell in one materia each. When you're max level, this materia will duplicate, and you can make up to 3 and put it on all of your party members. This was worth it. However, at this point, you are stronger than anything in the game, and there is no more secret bosses, so you can use this as overkill. The final boss is a joke now, too, but either way, there's still a fight to finish. Whether it be man, demon, or god, everyone has their Judgment Day. Before we head into the final battle, Cloud tells everyone to go find their purpose and reason for fighting. While everyone is fighting for the planet, there are still many personal things that the characters hold on to. Barrett, for instance, finally admits that he was truly fighting for Marlene to make a better world for her, which completes his character arc. The rest leave the Highwind to determine their reason and if they still want to fight, while Cloud and Tifa stay. If the player has treated Tifa awful at this point, the dialogue won't be much, but if they treated her well, we finally get that talk they should have had before. They both realize that they only have each other to go back to. Besides the friends they have made, they don't really have a home anymore, but what they do have is each other. Tifa's role in the party was a mothering figure. As I stated earlier in another aspect, she served as a guide to Cloud, but at the same time, Cloud was a guide for her, a guide for her past. Both characters lost everything in Nibelheim, so them together is their home to go to. Tifa always wanted that, but Cloud in his confusion didn't know what it was he wanted. Hell, if it wasn't for Tifa, Cloud and the others would not be in the position they are now without her guidance. And although she locked most of her true feelings away, like her last name, Lockhart, get it? She is finally able to open up some of it when talking to Cloud, and without the need for some mushy I love you speech, Cloud returns those feelings and lives up to his promise he made her years ago. It's very touching, and they sit under the high wind together before the final battle. This is why Tifa is the best girl in the game. Throughout all the struggles, she stayed as the guidance and would end up guiding the real Cloud back to himself. She reminds me of Bulma in that way, except Tifa can actually kick someone's ass, especially with those dolphins. But what I mean by that is without her, the story would have ended or never even started a long time ago, and Cloud, the Cloud that we know now, would cease to exist. The next day, everyone comes to the highway prepared to fight Sephiroth. While everyone has their own personal reasons, they are all fighting together for one thing: Aerith, letting go of Aerith's memory. Once Sephiroth is defeated, Aerith's spirit will be able to summon Holy and finally move on to the life stream. If it's not apparent now, Aerith's death has been a parallel to how people react to death in the real world. There was denial and anger in Cloud when Aerith was killed. Bargaining was shown when Cloud was losing himself in the Northern Crater. Depression was the events between then and when Cloud returned back, and now you're entering the stage of acceptance by literally letting go of Aerith so she can rest in peace. Again, life and death are big things in this game, but the most important of them is life. Only in the way your life was used can these stages occur. It's only natural when you're close to somebody. Again, that's the message of this game, showing how important the life is of someone. The Highwind lands in the final dungeon inside the Northern Crater. This area is the most unique dungeon in the game. It should be, since it's the final one. Jenova's influence is the most strong here, with many of the monsters being the most dangerous in the game. A lot of them can cast death, like these stupid llama bean looking dudes with knives. I hate these bastards. There's not even a save point here, as you're giving one to place anywhere to save, though I wouldn't do it, as a glitch can occur where you are locked in the dungeon and your save file is doomed. Although this is the last dungeon, there are still many important items here, mostly for the post-game stuff I talked about in the last section, like materia, but there is one stupid missable move, an enemy skill gained by the zombie dragon, who will only do this move, Pandora's Box, once per save. And you know the worst part of it? He can try to cast it and have no MP and it won't go through, but it will still count as being used, locking you out of a 100% save. I hate that crap in old RPGs. Missable items is such a stupid concept, especially this late in the game. The dungeon does give the vibe of a final area. It's very scary, and it gives off that dark feeling that the characters feel as they head into this final battle with no way out. The music gives off this too, appropriately titled Judgment Day. We reach the center of the planet where Sephiroth is waiting, and immediately the battle begins, with Jenova's synthesis, which might be Jenova's true form. At this point, I'm so strong that I can easily handle her, even as scary as she is. She's not that strong, but that was just the appetizer. Beating her sends us straight to Sephiroth. No longer a man, soldier, or experiment, Sephiroth has become a god, so powerful that we can't approach him directly. This truly is the ultimate showdown. Depending on your party level, it'll decide how much of your party will be able to participate in this fight. The lower the level, the less party members, but a weaker boss. The higher the level, the more party members, but a stronger boss. You're gonna need everything and everyone for this fight. Sephiroth starts out in his Bizarro form, a disgusting fusion of Jenova and Sephiroth. He's so huge, all the party members need to be present to take him out. Members are split into 3 groups to take out each one of his body parts. Each time a part is destroyed, you switch groups. However, Sephiroth can heal that damaged body part, so it's important to destroy them quickly, and then destroy the head while surviving his attacks, which are all high damaging. Defeating this form leads us into Sephiroth's ultimate form, Safer Sephiroth, the one-winged angel. Sephiroth's design is reminiscent of the Seraphim, the highest order of the angels. Most JRPGs go into religions when designing their final boss or lore, but they aren't only based on design, it may also have something to do with their character. Sephiroth was made to be the ultimate soldier of humanity, and this is the disgusting form that takes. Truly can be considered the god above men. Save for Sephiroth is not just above them in looks, but in power, as he has near and instant death attacks he can shoot out easily. He also has attacks that can cause some of the most frustrating status elements in the game. He can fly higher in this realm he created to avoid attacks, and his most powerful feat of all is his ultimate attack, the oblivion that is Supernova.
What is that? What the fuck is that?
Wait. Most players at this point probably shit their pants at this, including me, but it will never kill you, but it will take away 1/3 of your current health and give some status elements. Really, it's just a setup so Sephiroth can attack you. Oh, and you're fighting in a dimension that Sephiroth can cast. It's like a summoning, and this also shows that the planet and meteor are stronger than that attack, since Sephiroth seems to not want to use it to destroy the planet. That's insane. Sephiroth is truly on his own level. However, if you leveled or over leveled, it should be enough to beat him. But this battle will be astronomical no matter what. At last, Sephiroth is defeated. Or so we thought. As the party leaves, Cloud is once again struggling with his mind. In a last-ditch effort, Sephiroth tries to attack Cloud in his mind, but this is the real Cloud, and it's the end for Sephiroth. Sephiroth, the last hold on Cloud's mind, has been severed. Cloud destroying Sephiroth was him letting go of his past self, his weaker self, and he is free from the shackles of his past. We see that as the Nova Cell leave his body, as if it was a baptism. Cloud is reunited with Tifa as he takes her to go see her again. With Sephiroth gone, Holy can finally reach the planet, and the party escapes from the crater only to see that Holy is not enough. May have been too late. The planet is doomed. This is the last part of the grief of death, acceptance. Aerith moving on uses the live stream and Holy to push back Meteor. Their final message to Aerith has reached her, and they all finally let her go. "500 years later, we see an older Red with his cubs heading to the ruins of Midgar. After all this time, the planet has healed, thanks to the help of a few eco-terrorists. And finally, the planet and us the player can smile again." If it isn't apparent from this long video, I love Final Fantasy VII. And I wasn't even born at the time it came out, nor did I grow up with it like so many others have. I didn't get to sit down and play this game fully until about 2 years ago. Of course, I've heard of it and played it a bit over friends' places, but I never really sat down and played it until then. And when I did, it surprised me about how great of an experience it was. The story, gameplay, characters, and world kept me addicted to the screen, especially near the end, and I usually play RPGs in parts. Of course, it has its problems. Most are typically the same as many other RPGs of that era, such as missable items, redundant side quests, and a couple of cheap boss fights here and there, but I don't think its age really affected the game, besides graphics, which of course is what happens when a game was made 20 years ago, and yet it still looks amazing, and can be intriguing to explore in its low poly glory. But what got me the most was the characters, specifically our party, and specifically Cloud. A story is nothing without its characters. I think not only Cloud is a great character, but he was made in a way to relate to others. His weakness is something a lot of us go through every day. Not the evil alien mind control part, but dealing with loss and overcoming that weakness that you see in yourself. And I see many people who love Cloud because of this relation, because throughout all of this, he shows behind the weakness he has in his mind, he holds true strength. And that is something that not only me, but many others can aspire to every day. On this message of life, it shows us what a world would look like if we didn't take care of our planet, or more what the world would if we didn't appreciate the life around us. The theme comes in two ways: the more personal side between us as humans and the planet side, our environment and the world we live in. I mean, look at the end result of our work. The planet has fully healed and new life is born. I know some people think that the ending is a dark one since Midgar is destroyed and it seems there are no humans, but it really shows that humans have learned to live with the planet instead of living off of it. And as you can see by the sky, the deadly fumes of Midgar no longer stain the planet. Plus, we know that they didn't die, otherwise there wouldn't be so many spin-offs, and while we'll let her talk about them and what they added to the story, this video is already long enough and I'm kinda tired of working on it. But as for the original FF7, even out of these spin-offs, even out of the remake, as of right now, I still believe that this is the best of the FF7 family. Hell, even the FF family in general. FF7 just has this feel, man. Like it's its own unique, dark yet hopeful feeling that makes it stand out. There's a reason why this changed the game for JRPGs, and it wasn't just for sales. It really did change what a JRPG could be by making its conflict and story feel real. Yeah, I think that's what describes it. Real. Especially with the planet, which we gotta fix it ourselves. but it also feels real in life. Many of us, including me, and developers have lost somebody, and though we may mourn their death, the impact that they leave on us is from their life. And FF7 shows how important our life can be. The RPG elements are also great, with the material system adding so much and even breaking the game points. I didn't even talk much on that, but you have to watch that on your own. 4A Production shows a lot of that stuff off. This game was coated with glue and popsicle sticks, and yet it's still able to bring an amazing experience. I know the graphics may turn some off. Some of the grinding may scare you, but if you haven't played any other RPGs or are new to RPGs, or just haven't played this game in general, I would heavily suggest that you play this to see what impact it will have on you, because it may have as much impact as it had on me. I can only describe my experience, but I think FF7's is going to be more personal depending on how you play it. I didn't mention everything that's in this game from this video, so you still have some secrets that you'll find by playing it, and maybe you'll come with your own perspective from that. That's the beauty of it all. I mean, that's the beauty of playing games in general. I mean, that's the whole point I'm making content on this game. But at the same time, I think it's going to be more personalized, and you'll have to experience it for yourself through gameplay, because that's the most important thing. FF7 was able to push all of this through its gameplay. It wasn't just the story itself. It was through its gameplay that it enhanced the story, and with those elements combined, it made for just an amazing, honestly, man, just a masterpiece of a game. And I think it's going to be more personal for you to see what it really brought to the table. But what will always be there for everyone is FF7's pursuit of love, life, and battle. A pursuit that to this day is still worth fighting and playing for. Well, man, that was a long video, guys. I appreciate you guys making it all the way to the end. I know I had to split it in parts, and I'm going to release it as a whole. Actually, if you're watching this on a certain video, it's probably already released as a whole. But this took such a long time, man. I had recorded the footage back in December of 2020, and I wouldn't even finish recording that footage until February 2020 because I had so many other projects and schoolwork to do, man. I graduated, I got a job, a bunch of stuff has happened. And that's why it took like almost over a year to put this freaking video out. But it's out. And I'm so glad I'm going to put it out. Whether people like it or not, whether it's the best I put out or not, I'm just glad that I got this video out. And I hope if you guys are watching this video, if you guys want to make content, that you guys just go and create like I did, right? Of course, I also play FF7. I'm telling you right now, play FF7. I'm going to tell you again, play FF7. If you haven't seen this video enough, then you should understand that you should play FF7. But at the same time, I just want to thank you all for it. It's been a long journey, and we're raising up in subscribers. And I have an update video coming. I have more videos that will come out. I actually plan to have votes on what video game I cover next. So we'll see what gets covered then. But I just want to thank you guys again, because it has been a journey to make this freaking video, man. A lot of my friends know, like Brian, if you're watching this video, you know it. Mitchell, you're watching this video, you know it. Daniel, Devron, all y'all, man. I keep name dropping in this video, but it was a bunch of people, man. And they supported me, man. I was like, I almost wanted to give up at one point. I was like, man, I'm tired of working on this video, but I put it out. That's why it's been such a break between videos, but I'm trying to work a way to get a more consistent schedule. Just a lot of it's going on, you know? And that's life, like I said in the video. Like I said earlier, FF7, that's life. But I'm appreciating life. I'm appreciating the views. I'm appreciating, what I have, the ability to make this content. I'm appreciating all that. I put a lot of energy into that. And I just want to say again, I said it a bunch of times, but thank you for watching this video. If you really enjoyed the content, if you like what you saw, please subscribe. I promise you, I got more on the way. However long it takes, I got more on the way. We're going to be covering a lot of games in different genres, and it's going to be amazing. But also play FF7. Anyway, guys, this has been the J Blast Network, and we're signing out. And don't forget, love hard, live life the way you want to live it, and always conquer the battle that you have in your mind or whatever the hell you're going through, because you must pursue your dreams. Or whatever you need, man. I gotta come up with the outro. The old outro was from Parappa. You know what it is. Anyway, guys, I'm gone. I'll see you guys in the next video. Appreciate you. I'm out.